Добрый день, дорогие друзья! Рада приветствовать вас на стартап-форуме в рамках
Hello,
Северного форума по
we are
устойчивому
glad to welcome you
развитию.
at the
Меня
Startup
зовут Савина
Forum
Алексеева.
within the
Сегодня
Northern
я
Forum,
и Екатерина
Northern
Сафронеева
Sustainable
будем
Development
вашими
Forum. My name
модераторами.
is Savina
И,
Alexeyeva. Today
во-первых,
myself
нам бы
and
хотелось
Ekaterina
представить всех
Safroneyeva
гостей,
will
которые
be your
сегодня будут
moderators.
выступать перед нами.
First, we
Но
would like
перед
to
этим хотела
introduce all
бы
our
сообщить
guests,
всем спикерам,
but before
что
that, I would like to
обязательно необходимо
inform
выбрать язык
everybody
на экране
that
Zoom,
you
либо
have to
английский, либо
choose
русский,
a
для того,
language on
чтобы
your Zoom screen,
трансляция на
whether
YouTube-канале
English
и
or
на
Russian,
сайте
so
форума
that
велась должным образом.
the broadcast on the YouTube channel and on
Сегодня
the
в нашей
Northern Forum
дискуссии
website
принимают
be
участие
in a
Анатолий
proper way.
Семенов,
So today
министр
we have
инноваций,
Anatoly
развития
Semyonov,
и
the Minister
инфокоммуникационных
of
технологий Республики Саха-Якутия.
Innovation, Digital Development and Information and Communication Technologies of
И член
Yakutia,
Арктического
Paul
экономического совета.
Fus, President of Marine Exchange
Юлия
of Alaska
Шевикова,
and member of
руководитель
Arctic
направления регионального
Economic
развития
Council,
фонда
Юлия Шевикова, Head of the Regional Development Skolkovo
Яна
Foundation,
Терту, сотрудник Центра инноваций Васа,
Jana
Финляндия.
Vertu from the center, Pertu, I'm sorry,
Ева
from
Ву,
Vasa
директор
Innovation
Arctic
Center,
Youth Network.
Finland. Yeva Wu,
Celine
Director
Malikur,
of
магистрант
Arctic Youth Network.
Копенгагенского университета, Дания.
Celine Malikur,
Жень Миньву, научный
who
сотрудник
studies
университета
political
Рейдинг,
science at the
Англия.
University of
Алексей
Copenhagen.
Федоров, научный
Alexey
сотрудник
Fedorov
университета Лунда, Швеция.
from the
Василий Ефимов,
University
директор
of
фонда развития
Lunda
инноваций
in
Якутии.
Sweden.
И мы
Vasily
ожидаем
Efimov,
подключения
Director
Николая
of
Викторовича
Yakutia
Корчунова,
Innovation
посла по особым
Development Fund.
поручениям МИД
And
России,
also we think that
старшее
Mr.
должностное
Korchunov, the
лицо
ambassador at
Арктического
large and the
совета от
senior
Российской
Arctic
Федерации.
official from the Russian
Также у нас
Federation
сегодня
will join
участвует
us
Михаил
today.
Уксусов, сотрудник отдела
Also, we
международного
have Mikhail
сотрудничества
Oksisov
Мурманского
from
Арктического
International
государственного
Cooperation
университета,
Department of
молодежный посланник
Murmansk
Российской Федерации
State
по
University,
международному сотрудничеству в Арктике.
Youth
Еще раз
Ambassador
добрый
of
день,
Russia on
дорогие друзья.
International
Давайте
Cooperation in the
начнем.
Arctic. So let's start.
Начнем с министра
We will
инноваций
start
Республики
from the Minister
Саха-Якутия
of
Анатолия
Innovation,
Аскалоновича Семенова.
Mr.
Анатолий
Semyonov.
Аскалонович, вы с нами на связи?
So, Mr.
Да,
Semyonov, are
Савина,
you
добрый день,
here?
как меня слышно?
Yes,
Отлично.
we can hear you very
Отлично,
well.
да? Но позвольте в первую очередь
First of all, I
поприветствовать
would
всех
like to
участников
greet
этой
all
дискуссионной
participants
площадки.
of this
На самом
platform.
деле, спасибо пандемии,
Thanks
мы
to the
научились уже легко
pandemic,
очень собираться
we are now
в режиме
able to
видеоконференц-связи,
easily
проводить
hold all
конференции
our
международного уровня. И
events
на самом деле
via
в
video
рамках
conferencing.
региона Дальнего Востока
And we,
Якутия
as a
пошла
regional
вопросу
of the
точно,
Far
потому что
East, benefited
шансы
from
уравнялись,
it
теперь мы
because
можем
now we have equal
на равных, в
chances.
принципе, что и в Москве или в Европе собирать
We can be
такие
equal
представительные
just like in
конференции.
Moscow
Это
or
очень
in
радует,
Europe.
да? Мне сказали, у меня регламент
I was
небольшой,
told
я
that I am
постараюсь
short
рассказать,
of
что делается в
time, so
Якутии
I will try to tell what we
в
do in
части
Yakutia in terms of
развития
developing
инновационной экосистемы.
innovative
Сейчас,
ecosystem.
если презентация вышла, да, коллеги?
Да, видно.
You can see your
Да,
presentation.
очень коротко. Ну, то есть, на самом деле, республика, вот у
Actually,
нас очень
our
много
republic,
участников
we have
из
very many
рубежа.
participants
Я специально вот
from
поставил эти
abroad,
слайды, видно,
and on these
что мы
slides you can see that
входим в топ-3 по
we
добыче
are
золота.
in top
У
3
нас 1500
of
видов
gold
различных
mining.
месторождений.
We have over
В топ-10
1,500
по
of
индексу
different
промышленного
deposits.
производства. У
We
нас
are in top
22%
10 by the
ресурсов в целом по России,
industrial
35%
production
природного газа и нефти,
index, and
82%
we have
разрезанных запасов
22%
алмаза, но
of
вообще
all
топ-1,
hydro
в принципе,
resources,
25 мирового запаса, да, и 47
47%
разрезанных
of
запасов угля тоже сейчас по углю.
reconnaissant
При этом сейчас в
coal
Якутии
reserves.
добывается не только алмазы и
And
золото и уголь,
you
еще
know that
добывается,
in
начали добывать
Yakutia
нефть
we
и
also
газ, да,
mine oil
соответственно.
and gas.
Это проект «Силы Сибири», наверное, все слышали, и
Maybe you have
ВСТО.
heard about the
Вот. Также мы
project, The Power of
При этом у нас
Siberia.
очень такое
At the same
не,
time,
скажем так, плотное население. У нас
we have a
живет всего
very
меньше миллиона
low
человек на 3
population density.
миллионах квадратных
We
километров. То
have
есть
3
мы
million square
размером как
kilometers of
Индия,
territory, the size
то
of
есть
India, but
самая
we
большая
have less
территориальная
than 1
единица в
million
мире.
population.
Соответственно, здесь и вопросы логистики,
And here the issues
связи
of
и
logistics
прочее,
and
конечно, стоят очень
communication and
остро.
other issues
Но
are
при этом
very
мы первое место
acute.
по ДФО по инвестиционному
But
потенциалу, по
we
объему ВРП,
we
мы на
rank
первое место
first in the
вышли и будем
federal
расти на самом деле, потому что
Far Eastern Federal
таких проектов
District
по
by our
добыче
investment
у нас очень
potential,
много, да, и
and
мы
we
будем
have a lot of
расти дальше.
extraction
И здесь
projects.
возникает вопрос,
And here
при чем
we
тут
have the
инновации, при чем тут IT, зачем нам
issue
это, да,
of
то есть
why we need innovation and IT.
зачем вообще, давайте расслабимся и
Let's
начнем получать удовольствие, да, в этом процессе.
relax.
Вот, и вы знаете, мы провели исследование, и на самом
We
деле, так
have
как
conducted a
цифровизация
research,
и
and as long as
развитие,
digitalization and
роботизация,
development and
автоматизация
robotization
процессов
and
происходит в добывающих
automation
компаниях,
has
и
now
мы видим,
reached
что,
the
допустим, по примеру
mining
того же
companies. We
Mitchell,
can
который
see, for
добывает уголь,
example, in
объем
Mitchell
добычи остался
company,
примерно такой же, как
their
там, лет 10
volume
назад,
of extraction
но
is
количество
just
людей
about
сократилось. То
as
есть
it
сейчас
was
на добыче не так
10
много
years
людей, как
ago,
раньше.
but they now need less
Да, и это очень
personnel.
такой,
They
на самом деле,
not
важный
have
фактор,
as
потому
many
что
personnel as they
сейчас
used to, which
внедряются
is
проекты
quite
безлюдного
important.
карьера и прочее, прочее. И поэтому, так как, допустим, объем ВРП может увеличиваться без
And
участия, там,
as
большого
long
участия
as
там,
the volume
местного
of
населения.
the
И
gross
поэтому мы
regional
приняли
product
стратегию
can grow without
в
local
2019-2018
population.
году.
That's why in 2018 we
Учредили указ
adopted
главы
a
о инновационно-цифровом
strategy,
развитии. Глава, как только стал,
and
как избрался главой республики,
when
одним из
Mr.
первых
Nikolaev
стратегических документов
became
был
the
подписан
head
9-й
of
указ главы о
our
инновационно-цифровом развитии. И
republic,
так
he
развилось
signed
наше
an
министерство
order
инноваций
on
цифрового развития,
the
и появилась отдельная
innovative and
госпрограмма, в которой
digital
практически миллиард рублей заложен
development.
на
And
инновационно-цифровое
our
развитие.
state
Что называется,
program
мы
was
проголосовали за
allocated
это
1
дело.
billion
Ну и,
rubles.
конечно, у нас команда, которая до
And
этого
of course,
поступила в Бостонский университет на программу
the
MIT,
team
мы
that
оттуда переняли вот эту
entered
инновационную экосистему, она
Boston
выглядит так. У нас во
University,
главе стоят
MIT.
предприниматели, то есть все для того,
We
чтобы
took
развивался
this
технологический бизнес. И вот в этом
technology
году
from
технопарку
them.
Якутия будет исполняться 10 лет, и
This
венчурная
year,
компания. То есть мы, в
Technopark
принципе, в этой
Yakutia
истории уже
turns
10
10
лет этим занимаемся.
years, as well
Но
as
вот
the
последние
Yakutia
3 года
Venture
мы вот
Company.
видоизменили нашу
But in the
экосистему, потому
last
что
3
мы
years, we
четко
have
понимаем, что
transformed our
вот
ecosystem
благодаря росту
because we fully
добывающих компаний,
understand that
такие как вот
thanks
Калмара,
to the
Алроса и другие,
growing
они
growth of such
становятся у нас
companies
драйвером
as
роста, то
Colmar
есть
and Alrosa, they
несмотря
are
на деньги Алроса,
our
развитие инноваций,
growth
они
drivers.
ставят нам технологические задачи перед
They
IT-компаниями
set
и
some
инновационными компаниями, решая их.
challenges to our
Университет нам
IT
поставляет
and
стартапы
innovative
и
companies,
научные
and
проекты,
the university
наши венчурные
supplies
фонды
us with
финансируют эти
startups,
проекты. Ну и,
and our
соответственно,
venture funds, they
предприниматели активно, у нас есть ассоциация архитекторов,
provide
у нас активная
finance to
там
these
бизнес-ангелов,
projects.
активное вообще IT-сообщество,
And we have
вот,
quite
и
an
вот
active
вместе
IT
все взятые,
community.
вместе с правительством
So
мы
all
вот
together
являемся
with
этой
our
экосистемой. То есть
government,
без одного
we
из элементов этой
represent
экосистемы
this
очень
innovative
сложно,
ecosystem.
скажем
And
так,
it would be difficult to
как-то,
somehow
ну, создав один там технопарк или один венчурный фонд, очень
survive
сложно
without
создать
all
инновационную
components
историю
of
в отдельно взятом
these
субъекте. И нам это
components.
удалось. Ну, вот открытый IT-парк, вы знаете, один из
You know
первых
that
на Дальнем
we
Востоке,
have
ну,
one of
сейчас
the
их
first
стало
IT
два, в
parks
Южно-Сахалинске открыли
in
небольшой,
the
но
Far East.
мы
Now
были
they
первыми,
have
и
one
у
in
нас уже больше 100
Южно-Сахалинск.
резидентов,
Now we
больше
have
ежегодная компания.
over
Мы
100
растем,
residents,
на 10
and
тысяч квадратов мы уже не помещаемся в этом
the
парке. Очень бурный рост.
area that we
Мы
occupy
начали
is
создавать
more than
одним из первых
10,000
в стране,
square
вот сейчас
meters.
Татарстан
So
начал копировать нашу модель.
now
Мы стали
Tatarstan
создавать
is
филиалы
using
IT-парка в
our
районных центрах.
model, and we
Мы
are
их создали
opening
уже
the
15.
branches of
Вот,
our
это такие
IT park
небольшие
in
коворкинги,
the
где-то
regions
порядка
of
150-200
Yakutia.
квадратах,
They are
где есть
some
образовательный центр,
small
есть
co-working
коворкинг, быстрый интернет,
centers
там
with
кофемашина,
like
соответственно,
fast
компьютеры
internet and
и
coffee
тьютеры,
machine
которые
and
обучают стартапы.
internet and
И
some
это очень дает
tutors
такой
who
синергетический эффект,
teach
потому что мы создаем
startups.
рабочие места в районах,
We create
соответственно, обучаем их,
jobs
впитываем
in
им
our
какие-то
regions yes, we
дистанционно, потому
train them
что сейчас вот век цифровых технологий, неважно, где ты
because
находишься,
now
важно, что ты умеешь делать.
it's not
Поэтому
important where you
задачу мы
are.
поставили себе
What
10
is
тысяч рабочих
important
мест
is
в
what you
IT-отрасли
can.
создать. Очень осязаемая
So
задача. Сейчас
our
3,5
task
тысячи
is
человек
to
работает.
create as
Мы
many as
активно очень в этом
10,000
направлении
jobs
работаем.
in this area.
Региональный центр инжиниринга, то есть, по сути, мы
Regional
делаем
Center
все
of
проекты под ключ,
Engineering.
так же, как многие
All
технопарки,
our
но мы это
projects
поставили
are
вообще на поток. То есть, в принципе,
ready-made,
сейчас любой человек, который обратится к
and
нам,
any
мы
person
можем упаковать его
who
проект, то есть защитить
addresses us
патентом и получить сертификат
can
своей
get
продукции. Также для того, чтобы
can
популяризировать
get his or
IT
her
среди
project
молодежи, мы
packed and
проводим вот такой конкурс
certified.
с помощью наших
We
также
also
предпринимателей, нашего
organize a
бизнес-сообщества. Мы проводим
contest
конкурс «Моя
called
профессия IT»,
My
ездим
Profession
по
is
районам, проводим
IT. We
мастер-классы,
go
выездные
to
такие
different
хакатоны. В этом году у
regions
нас
and
участвовало
organized
1500
masterclasses
детей, и
and
лучшим ребятам,
hackathons.
выпускникам мы даем целевые места в
And
центровузы, в наш
the
Северо-Восточный федеральный
winners
университет
of our
техникуме, то есть
contests,
разбираем
they
ребят.
get
Ну
a
и, соответственно,
chance
популяризируем
to
это
study
сообщество.
at
И на самом
our
деле конкурс
university and at the
становится очень
leading
популярным.
Russian
И, кстати, вот КФУ,
universities.
допустим, это дает баллы к ЕГЭ, да, для поступления. Ну, мы, кстати, одна из метриков – это выбор информатики вот как ЕГЭ, да, то есть это тоже мы
And
смотрим, что
one of the
ежегодно
conditions
выбор
for these
этого предмета
students
растет.
is that they have
Ну, в нашей
to
экосистеме особую роль
pass
занимает федеральный
the
университет. Там много
computer
вузов на
science
Дальнем Востоке,
exam.
два, это в ДВФУ и СВФУ.
In
У
the
нас
Far
19
East,
тысяч
there are
студентов обучается в
two
СВФУ.
federal
У нас там
universities.
Технический институт есть,
The
Институт математики и
Northeastern
информатики, и
Federal
это главная
University is
кузница
our
посредникаторов.
university.
Этот университет я
And
закончил в свое время. И там же есть
now they have some
инкубатор ОРЕХ, который у нас в
19,000
Экипатии находится. То есть,
students.
мы очень активно продвигаем там
So this is our major
предпринимательское сообщество в университете. То
university.
есть, на самом деле,
They
благодаря
have
университету
Orech
у нас есть постоянная воронка проектов.
incubator.
Ну, если говорить про кадры, у нас
Speaking
более
about the
50 частных
personnel,
IT-школ
we
в
have
Якутии,
over
да, где-то
50
примерно
private IT
500
schools in
человек в год выпускается,
Якутия,
у нас по 200, но мы эту цифру будем увеличивать, потому что сейчас
and
планируем создавать
some
и частные
500
колледжи, да, цифровых
students
технологий, притягиваем
graduate every
различные
year.
другие вузы, там
But
реформируем наши
we
вузы. То есть,
aim
на
to
самом деле довольно серьезно
increase this
этим
number.
занимаемся, потому что основная сейчас, на самом деле, мы инфраструктуру все создали. Главная задача
We
это, конечно,
have
кадры. Там это
created all
голод и в мире, и в
infrastructure,
стране, и вот в
but
Якутии
now
тоже
we
есть
need
некий голод на
personnel.
кадры. Про акселератор B8 ребята, наверное, еще расскажут.
I
Будет
think
Василий Ефимов
that
рассказывать. Я просто хочу сказать,
Vasily
что
Efimov will
вот
tell about
в
B8
свое время мы очень
accelerator.
много
I just
работали
want to tell that
с Федеральным институтом развития.
we
Вот сейчас
used
мы
to
стали
work
регоператором фонда
with
Сколково, за что им огромное
the
спасибо.
Federal Institutes
Нас
of
поддерживают,
Development,
но при
and
этом
now we are
всего лишь
a
2%
regional
вечерных денег
operator
доходит до
of
Дальнего Востока. 2% из всех
Skolkovo
вечерных сделок в стране
Foundation.
доходит до Дальнего Востока.
But I have to
Естественно,
say that
поэтому
only
в
2%
Якутии
of
было принято
all
решение
venture
создавать собственные
transactions
акселераторы,
get
собственные
to the Far East.
адаптированные
That's why it was
программы,
decided to
и,
establish
соответственно, мы
our
на ранней стадии
own
мы делаем 2 миллиона
accelerators.
проект,
We
профинансировали уже
give
37
up
проектов, и это
to
позволяет
2 million
стартапам,
rubles
запустить, не
for a
выезжая здесь, получать
startup,
сервис. А дальше уже, естественно,
which allows them
седловые
to
инвестиции
start
и остальные, то
their
есть мы, соответственно, это двигаем. Да,
projects
это очень
here
важно,
in
потому что
Yakutia.
у нас уже есть некий пайплайн из проектов, которые вот вы видите, да,
We
которые
have a
получают деньги
pipeline of
физически,
projects
менторскую поддержку,
who
и
get
уже выходят
physically
дальше
their
там и
money
институты развития,
and
другие
they
фонды,
mentor
привлекают
support,
инвестиции.
and
Есть
then
что
they continue
посмотреть, есть на
working
чем
with other
поработать, если кто-то
funds.
кому интересно, у нас приглашаю в декабре на демо-дэй 6-го потока. Вот проекты, на самом деле очень много проектов. Я, кстати,
There
очень
are
хочу сказать,
quite a lot
что
of
мне как
projects,
министру, я раньше был
and
директором технопарка, мне как
I
министру
used
очень
to
удобно,
be
что в Якутии
a
очень много
director
разработчиков
of
под боком. Мы
Technopark,
очень много
and
решений
for me
делаем
as a
и для
minister,
государства,
it
и
is very
для
convenient to have
бизнеса, и
a
для
lot of
различные цифровые сервисы. Вот
developers right
самый такой
here
популярный
in
сервис,
Yakutia.
который, наверное,
The
все,
most popular
вы знаете,
service
это
that you
ну, вот есть
know,
Pricebox, Google Technology, то есть у нас, допустим, где-то Delivery Club есть, где-то там
we
доставка, а
have
у нас
like
вот, допустим, доставка это Go курьер, это собственная доставка, есть
we have
собственная
this
доставка, собственная доставка воды, продажа,
water
онлайн-продажа там
delivery,
билетов, афиши и КТ, то есть такие
uh,
job, то есть вот у нас
job,
собственные сервисы
еда,
рождаются, и это удобно, потому что
it's like a food
федеральные до нас очень
delivery,
медленно доходили, и мы,
price
соответственно,
box,
обкатываем эти
which is
идеи.
quite
И так вот родился,
convenient.
допустим, Индрайвер, да, как
And
из
that's
группы
how
ВКонтакте выросла
InDriver was
вот,
born.
единорога, которая...
Now it's a
То есть
unicorn.
сервис... У нас не было Яндекс.Такси, не
We
было
didn't
Uber,
have like
соответственно, была группа
Yandex
ВКонтакте,
Taxi
где мы друг друга
or
заказывали, ездили по
Uber.
городу, соответственно, родился такой отличный
And
проект,
it
который Арсен
gave
Томский
birth
возглавляет. И,
to
соответственно,
such a great project
оценили уже
headed
больше
by
миллиарда
Arsen
долларов,
Tomsky,
больше
which
миллиарда
now
поездок
cost
от 34
more
штатов
than
мира
$1
работает. Это
billion,
вот ребята
and
из
it
Якутска. И
operates
вот
in
такие сервисы
33
появляются, и
countries
этим
of the
очень удобно. То
world.
есть я на самом деле этим сервисом ежедневно пользуюсь, да.
I use it
Ну
every
или
day.
компания Майтона,
Or,
которая
for
тоже
example,
была
Mytona
стартапом
company,
в 2012
which
году,
used to be a
сначала называлась как
startup.
Soul's Games, потом Майтона. Сейчас более 1000 сотрудников. Это игровая
Now
компания,
it
которая делает
has
игры,
more
да. То
than
есть большой
1,000
оборот. У нас
employees.
в
They
Якутске очень
produce
много сотрудников
games,
этой компании, R&D
and
полностью есть. Хотя есть офис на
we have
Востоке,
a lot of
и
staff of this company here in Yakutsk,
ну и
but
вот
they
еще
also
один
work
стартап, который
in
тоже
our other
заслуживал
cities
внимания,
and
это Резидент
countries
Парка,
of the
компания
world.
Fantastic,
And
тоже
then
делает
another
игры. И
startup,
на самом деле у нас
Fantastic,
коллаборация такая
they
очень хорошая.
also
И наши
produce
представители как
games,
когда
and
вот
it's a
Майтона
collaboration
вышла
of
издателем
our
у Fantastic,
development
Fantastic, девелопер,
institutes.
соответственно, и издатель якутский, деньги все остается здесь, да, и девелопер тоже местный, соответственно, вот ждем игру The Day
And
Before,
what
такая
is
очень
important
интересная
is that the
игра,
money from this
набрала очень много
startup,
просмотров
it stays
на
here
различных
in
сайтах,
Yakutia
которые
because the
предлагают
developer
игровые компании.
is from
Ну, они
here.
растут тоже, очень, там уже 150 сотрудников в компании. Но если бы не говорить только, что мы делаем только для игр, мы делаем, допустим, вот
But we, of course,
есть
not
такой Сколково
produce
проект
not
Boardgame
only
AI, у нас есть
games.
тоже компания Skybiri, которая сделала систему Iris, она внедрена в
For
15
example,
больницах во
this
время вот
system
пандемии. До
Iris,
этого
it
они
was
специализировались
implemented
на
during
компьютерной
the
томографии печени, сейчас
pandemic.
делают вот компьютерную томографию легких,
Now they
помогают
make
врачам
this
делать правильный
computer
диагноз
tomography
на
and
пневмонию,
help
вызванной
doctors
новой коронавирусной инфекции.
to
Да?
identify
Очень большая
the
точность диагноза, и на самом деле
pneumonia
уже
caused
проходим, мы сейчас
by
пытаемся получить
COVID-19.
сертификацию на продукты, чтобы
Now they
масштабировать
are
ее вот
trying
уже в
to
другие
get
субъекты.
certified
Ну или
for
цифровой помощник
scaling
Айта,
up.
который
Or a
работает с
digital
обращением
assistant AITA
населения, то есть тоже уже запущен,
that
сделан
has
нашими ребятами.
also been launched.
Ну и мы будем не останавливаться только на
And
IT, мы делаем центры
we
медицинских
don't only
исследований,
work with
21-24 год
IT
запланирован уже зеленый час
in
Содружества, сейчас предпроектная работа,
2023-2024.
вот там
We
клеточные
plan to
технологии,
establish
все,
a
что связано с медициной, это
biotechnology
сейчас очень
research
востребовано, будем тоже,
and
ну и биотехом
development
будем внедрять.
center BioArc.
Ну и вот сейчас выкупили здание мясокомбината на 12 тысяч
We
квадратов, создаем
now
там
have
креативный
a
кластер.
building where
Вот
we
тоже
will
наш
establish a
подъезд как раз этим
creative
и
cluster.
занимается. Задача вот
A creative cluster.
создаем фонд цифрового контента, то есть мы
It's a fund of
помимо игр
digital
хотим делать,
content. In
вы знаете, что
addition
Якутия
to
снимает очень много фильмов.
games, you know
Вот
that in
буквально на
Yakutia they
последнем
produce a lot of
кинотавре наш режиссер
films. Our
лучшего режиссера в прошлом году,
director
главный премию
Vladimir
фильм наш брал. Ну и то
Munkuev
есть мы
was
постоянно
awarded
где-то
as
в
the
год
best
снимаем
director
примерно
quite recently. So every
ну, тут
year
28
we produce
фильмов написано, ну где-то
some
порядка 15-20 фильмов мы снимаем, и,
15 to
соответственно,
20 films,
это позволяет говорить о том, что мы
which
можем
allows
тоже
to
занимать
say that we can
на
also
экспорт. И,
occupy
соответственно,
this
мы
niche as
собираемся
an
также
expert
развивать анимацию, да,
niche.
то есть все,
So
ну
we
и все,
plan
что
to
связано с
also
анимацией, с кино,
develop
и геймдевом,
animation
соответственно, и
and
образовательные
game
платформы,
dev.
мы в эту сторону создаем условия, чтобы вот эту нишу занять. Вот и у нас
And
есть
we
расчеты,
make
конкретный эффект от
conditions,
реализации проекта, то есть мы собираемся
and
вот,
we have
уже
the
в креативном направлении
specific
там
calculations
52
that you
тысячи
can
занятых,
see
да,
on the
и в
screen.
объем ВРП тоже там приличный. То есть на самом деле вот это заканчивая свои выступления в начале, которые я говорю, что именно в креативных индустриях можно
In the
много создать рабочих
creative
мест.
industries,
А
you
в
can
добывающих,
make a
соответственно,
lot
ну,
of
то есть,
jobs,
конечно, налоговое
whereas in the
потребление, пользуясь
mining industries,
растущей добывающей экономикой, мы
using
должны
these
вот вкладывать
tax
в креативность, да,
revenues,
вот такая
we
стратегия.
have to
Ну и вот, если говорить про
invest
экспорт IT-услуг, на
in
Дальнем Востоке
these
85%
creative
экспорта
industries.
IT-услуг – это якутские IT-компании. То есть это по данным
In the
Центробанка.
Far East,
То есть, по сути, мы
85% of
по факту можно
IT
измерить, сколько
services
денег мы имеем, да.
is
Спасибо. У меня всё,
Sahara
готов ответить на
Republic.
вопросы.
Анатолий Аскалонович, огромное спасибо.
you.
У нас формат дискуссии и вопросов будет в самом конце.
We will have questions and
Надеюсь,
answers
что
at
можно
the
будет,
end.
вы сможете тоже подключиться к этому.
I
И,
hope that you will be
действительно,
able to
Якутию
take
все
part.
привыкли
Yes,
воспринимать
indeed,
как
Yakutia is
ресурсодобывающий регион.
normally
Но
seen
как
as a
только как только что вы
mining
слышали,
region, but you have
гипотеза
just
ставку
heard
именно на
that
инновационное
we
развитие,
now focus
технологическое
on
развитие
innovative
и
and
на развитие
technological
креативной
development
индустрии.
and the
Теперь я
development
бы
of creative
хотела бы
industry.
обратиться к нашим гостям,
And
которые,
now I would
несмотря
like
на
to
все сложности, связанные с
address to
компанией, с
our
получением визы,
guests
приехали
who
к нам с Аляски.
came from Alaska,
Уважаемый Пол Фус, президент
Mr. Paul
Marine Exchange
Foos,
of Alaska и член
the
Арктического
president of Marine
экономического
Exchange of
совета, и
Alaska
его
and the
коллега Диана
member
Келлер.
of
Мы очень рады,
Arctic
что вы сегодня с
Economic
нами.
Council, and his
Пол,
colleague
пожалуйста, я передаю вам
Diana
слово.
Keller. So the floor is yours.
Good evening. And if you could pull up my PowerPoint, please. Foos N Forum 21. There we go. So I'll be addressing the issues of technology here, but I do just want to say I like this picture because for several years I worked as a commercial diver, and this is what the Arctic Ocean looks like from under the water. It's beautiful and it's clean, and we want to keep it that way. So a lot of the technologies I want to talk about here today are related to climate change, which is, of course, is a big concern for everybody in the Arctic. And when we talk about how did we get here, it was because of the consumption of fossil fuels by the 7 billion people that live in the rest of the world, not what the 4 million people in the Arctic have done. Now, producing oil and gas and fossil fuels is a big part of our economy, and we want to make the transition to a non-carbon world. But in the meantime, we and the rest of the world are going to still need those resources to make this transition. And we have an example right now in Europe where, because the winds stopped blowing, now they're using twice as much coal, they're using twice as much gas, and it's costing them twice as much money. So for every society, energy is one of the most important elements. You can't live without it. So we need to be realistic about the choices we're making there. At the same time, we do need to actively reduce our carbon emissions into the atmosphere. And of course, we're seeing this in the Arctic through melting permafrost and a lot of other things. So, one of the best ways that we can do that is we transfer to renewable energy. So what this slide shows is what the other Arctic nations have done. And I was corrected earlier today. I left Iceland off, but Iceland is also 99% renewable. You see the percentages of the other countries, it's really high. 98% Norway, Greenland 81, even Alaska 30%, Russia 21%. When we look at the United States, only 9% renewable energy. EU or European Union overall 19%, 13% world overall. So we really are being the leaders in renewable energy, and we've developed quite a few technologies around that are very useful. To make a transition from carbon-based economy is going to require fuels, alternative fuels. And that presents a big opportunity for the Arctic because we have a lot of stranded energy. What I mean by that, a huge energy source, but with a small population that only needs a small amount of energy. And what we're looking at is using those stranded sources to produce hydrogen. And hydrogen is a great fuel. It's going to be the energy carrier of the future. What you're seeing in this slide here is all the volcanoes that are in the Aleutian Islands. So we're looking at mass production of hydrogen there. And, this is in Kamchatka, also in Iceland. And so the way when you apply electricity to water, it divides it into hydrogen and oxygen. So when you recombine them, then the energy that's created there in a fuel cell will drive a motor or will do, whatever you want. So right now, this is how at the International Space Station, that's how hydrogen is used. So hydrogen produces all their electricity. The heat from it heats the International Space Station. When you combine hydrogen and oxygen back together, you get pure water. That's all their drinking water. So it's a completely closed system without carbon. It's really cool. So we're looking at this. There are currently proposals to say on the Northern Sea Route, you can't use heavy fuel oil anymore. It's very polluting. If you get an oil spill, it's going to be a problem. Well, what is the alternative fuel? You have to have the alternative. So we're looking at this. And Sweden is also building one of the first plants to do this on the European side. So where you also have potential for large hydroelectric production, you could also produce these fuels. So this one is interesting, and this is an underwater river generator. And with this technology, this turbine is connected to the bottom of the river. And as the river flows by, it turns the turbine and creates electricity. We're applying this in Alaska, and even where we have freezing, you'll have 2 meters, maybe 3 meters most of ice on top. The river is still flowing underneath. So this can still work year-round. And I'm thinking Lena River here, Amur River in Khabarovsk, this could be a potential non-carbon generator for you. Another potential saving reduction in CO2 is using the Northern Sea Route. And here you see the Northern Sea Route connected to the Great Circle Route. And this is where, if we can create this hydrogen-based fuel in either the Aleutians or Kamchatka, we can fuel all these vessels and reduce their carbon footprint. You can see how much shorter the Northern Sea Route is. It saves a substantial amount of fuel. Now, there are some people that would say, well, we don't like it because, it's dangerous. Well, we don't want to see ships in the Arctic. Well, Russia's been operating ships here for a long time, and they know what they're doing. And a whole new class of icebreakers, which will be even more powerful and safer, can operate the sea route on a year-round basis. Those ships are about 2 years away. So from Alaska, one of our concerns and all of the Arctic people is if we have an oil spill from a vessel, what's going to happen to that? And these are the circulation patterns of the ocean. You can see if we have an accident of the vessels there, we're going to have pollution over the entire Arctic coast. So we want to prevent that. So one of the technologies we're using is every international vessel has to transmit its position, latitude and longitude, every 6 seconds. And so we've put up antennas to receive that data and display it, on a geographic display. So we know where every ship is. You can see here for the Bering Strait, we see all of waters Alaska, all of waters Russia, and we're currently proposing a joint management area with Russia to use this technology where we'll jointly manage this area. And we went to the International Maritime Organization, Alaska and Russia, and we got designated these shipping lanes where people can safely ship, where they're not going to run into each other, where they're not close to the shore. We've got time to respond if they have a problem. So we're doing that as well. Part of this technology is that we can also transmit data to the ship from our land-based stations. For instance, we've got people whale hunting in this area. We want people to be careful. Or we've got marine mammals have clustered up in an area. We don't want people to disturb them. So what we like about this is it's dynamic resource protection. These marine mammals move around, and there's a lot of they go to a different place every year, so we can respond to that with this system, this dynamic resource protection. So this is our headquarters, and we manage this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We're watching all these ships, and if someone is in an unsafe condition, we know it. If the vessel slows down to less than 3 knots per hour, we know that's a problem. We're calling that ship on the radio and saying, what's the problem? And if they say, well, we've got a problem with our steering, or we've got a problem with our engines, then we look for where is the next nearest vessel that can come rescue them and keep them from having an oil spill on the beach. So this is using technology to prevent oil pollution that we're using on a regular basis. So one of the things that we get when we talk about environmental issues, and I don't know what your education system is like here, specifically in Russia, but in our U.S. schools, a lot of our children are being taught, well, we'll just fix everything, we'll just all drive electric cars, and that'll take care of everything. What they don't talk about is, where's that electricity going to come from? It doesn't just come out of the wall. It has to come from somewhere. So what is the source of that electricity? Also, what does it take to make an electric car? And this is another big opportunity for the Arctic, which is our mining operations. Now, when you look at this mine, it probably doesn't look that pretty. And some people are concerned, and we even have some environmental groups saying, oh no, you can't do any mining in the Arctic. It's the same people that are saying we need to go to a non-carbon economy. Well, maybe their education background just wasn't very good, because you cannot build an electric car without mining. Each electric vehicle takes at least 85 kilograms of copper. When you mine for copper, you get about 3% recovery rate. That means you need to mine 3 tons at the mine for every single car. So that's got to come from somewhere. So it kind of points out that in all these issues that we come to, there are trade-offs. And we're going to have to make some sacrifices, but we need to be honest about what those are. So one of the proposals that we're making to the Northern Forum and the Arctic Economic Council is a development of a sustainable development school curriculum, a class that would be taught in classes all across the Arctic that would include what is the reality of our economy, how do we live, how do we feed our family, how do we make a living, how do we operate in an environmentally safe way so we protect our subsistence resources, so we protect our nature so it's good for tourism. And so we want to work with the Arctic Economic Council, the Northern Forum, maybe the University of the Arctic. There may be other people, your youth group, or whoever, to really develop this curriculum so that we get a good way for making these decisions with full knowledge of what the trade-offs are when we look at these. The other aspect is that in order to do all of this, we need to be able to cooperate with each other. And one of the biggest problems that we've had is because of the disputes of our national governments for issues that don't have anything to do with the Arctic. We've had sanctions put on where our companies cannot come over here and share their technologies. We've had visa problems. It took me, I have a lot of connections. It took me 18 months to get a visa to come here. But I finally got it. And so, because we can't do direct flights from Alaska because they stopped these reciprocal flight agreements, I used to be able to fly to Petropavlovsk, Kamchatsky, and maybe another 3 hours to Yakutsk, 7 hours. To get here on this trip, I flew from Anchorage, Seattle, New York, Moscow, Yakutsk. 23 hours to get here. So we really need to call on our national governments to open these back up and say the Arctic is an area where we can really cooperate with each other. If we want to do student exchanges, we'd have the same issue. We'd have the same problems. So we really need to put forward and advocate for our governments to say, keep the Arctic separate. This is a peaceful and cooperative effort. All of us who live here, we all want to work with each other. Don't put problems in the way for us for issues that really don't have anything. Go argue about Crimea somewhere else. Don't take it out on us in the Arctic. So that's our position from Alaska, and I'm really glad to be here. I would take some questions if you would have some, but I hope this is useful as you take a look at technology in the Arctic.
Пол, огромное спасибо за ваш доклад. Действительно, очень важно помнить, что о каких бы технологиях мы ни говорили, в любом случае данные технологии в Арктике, особенно на севере, особенно должны быть связаны с темой устойчивого развития. И я очень надеюсь, что те инициативы, о которых сегодня говорил Пол, в программе обучения для молодежи, для студентов и
these educational programs for school children and youth, they could be implemented by the joint efforts of our countries. So we stay connected. And now I would like to go to Moscow and listen to Yulia Shevekova, head of the regional development of Skolkovo Foundation, and listen to how Skolkovo works with the regions of the North and the Arctic and what are the support measures.
Добрый день, коллеги, добрый вечер.
Good evening, dear colleagues. I'm glad to be at this forum. And before I switch to some specific issues,
молодежного предпринимательства, в двух словах хотелось бы рассказать,
briefly, I would like to tell about what is Skolkovo
чем мы, собственно, занимаемся, чем мы можем быть полезны. Если в одном предложении сказать, что такое Сколково, так...
In one sentence, Skolkovo is the opportunity for technological entrepreneurs to get some resources and impetus for the growth of their business, and for large companies, it's the opportunity of finding technologies to make their business more competitive. Today we have more than 3,000 startups who have generated over 160 billion rubles in 2020 and attracted over 25 billion rubles of investment. The important element of our innovative ecosystem is industrial partners. They are large customers who create demand for small companies, for startups. And we work with over 130 partners, including the international ones. So we have industrial partners in all our domains. Another important element of our ecosystem is the University of Skoltech. This university is in the Skolkovo territory, and it was established in cooperation with MIT. And some of our professors are from MIT. And of course, we believe that non-innovative ecosystem can exist without support from academic community. And our university is unique in a way that we don't have bachelor programs, we only have master programs, and we only teach in English, and we enroll guys who for 4 years work on a specific project. So this is a startup as a diploma project. So when they
открывают
graduated
уже
from the
собственные
university, they
компании, в
open
том
up
числе
their
на
own
территории Сколково,
companies
и
in
остаются в этой
Skolkovo, for
среде.
example, and they stay
Что
in this
касается
environment.
регионального развития,
As
мы
for the
считаем, что
regional
это безусловная
development, we believe that
точка
this
роста,
certainly is a
которая
growing point,
позволяет позиционировать
which
Сколково
allows
как
to
проект, который,
position
собственно,
Skolkovo
не
as a
ждет стартапы
project
и
which is not waiting for
корпорации, а идет к
startups
ним
and
физически.
corporations,
И,
but
конечно же, в такой
goes
большой
to
стране,
them.
как
And
Россия,
of course, in such a big
чтобы
country
стать
in
поистине
Russia, in
федеральным
order to become
проектом,
a federal
недостаточно
project,
лоцироваться
it's
только в
not
Москве.
enough to be
И поэтому
located
3 года
in
назад мы
Moscow.
начали развивать
That's why 3
региональную
years
сеть
ago we started to develop our regional
региональных
network,
операторов. Это
regional
аккредитованные региональные
networks,
технопарки. И их основной
licensed
целью
or
является
accredited
предоставление сервисов Сколково для
technoparks. So
технологических
they provide
предпринимателей в
Skolkovo
регионах.
services for technological businessmen in the
Мы
regions.
бы хотели, чтобы
And
любой
we
стартап,
want
который
any
сегодня сидит
startup
в гараже и
that
делает свой
can be
продукт,
in a
даже в самых
garage
отдаленных
in some
уголках страны,
remote
получил
areas
поддержку
of our
Сколково
country
через
could be
ближайший к нему
supported by
инновационный центр,
Skolkovo
в
through
данном
the
случае там,
nearest
технопарк, бизнес-инкубатор,
innovative center like
и
Technopark or
получил эту
business
поддержку
incubator.
доступный,
Get
понятный
accessible
цене.
and
И на
understandable
сегодняшний день у
support.
нас 18
And
региональных
today
операторов
we
из
have
технопарков по всей
18
стране и
regional
10 региональных
operators
представителей.
and
Это мы их
10
называем
regional
амбассадоры Сколково.
representatives, or we
В
call
тех
them
регионах, в
Skolkovo
которых пока нет
ambassadors
еще
in the
объекта
regions
инфраструктуры, то
where
есть нет технопарков, либо он
there are no
очень маленький.
technoparks
Но
or the
есть
region
такие
is very
активисты, которые
small. But there
готовы
are some active people
помогать
who are
и
ready
развивать
to
технологическое
help and develop
предпринимательство в
this
регионах.
technological entrepreneurship in the region.
Нашими партнерами
Our
в регионах
partners
Севера
in the
и
regions
Арктики
of the
является,
North and
конечно
the
же,
Arctic are, of
такой
course,
мощный партнер, сильный, как технопарк Якутия.
Yakutia
Это
Technopark,
также технопарк в ХМАО Югры и представители
Yugra
в Мурманске и
Technopark,
в Архангельске.
and
Конечно, мы на этом не
representatives in
останавливаемся, и в
Murmansk
ближайшее
and
время мы все
Arkhangelsk.
больше и больше будем находить
But
партнеров
we are
в данных
searching for
регионах.
more
И
partners in these regions.
с данными партнерами, с
With these
технопарками мы
partners,
ведем
with the
активную
Technopark, we
совместную
work
работу по
actively
развитию технологического
to develop
предпринимательства,
technological
проводим
entrepreneurship.
совместные программы акселерационные
We
для
conduct
стартапов,
joint
и
acceleration
в том числе по
programs for
выводу на
startups,
международные рынки.
including those to reach the
Коллеги
international
регулярно участвуют
markets.
в
And our
мероприятиях
colleagues
вместе со своими
regularly
стартапами на
take
территории
part in the
Сколково, так
events
и мы
with their
приезжаем
startups in
часто в
Skolkovo,
регионы.
or
И
we
на
come to
сегодняшний
the
день
regions. And
на
as of
территории
today,
региона Севера и Арктики
in the
у нас
Arctic and
25
northern
участников
regions, we have
Сколково, которые
25
активно
participants
ведут
of
свою
Skolkovo who
деятельность
are
и
actively
в различных
working
направлениях, таких
in
как
different
биомедицинские технологии,
areas like
IT-технологии
biomedicine,
и
IT
энергоэффективности. Мы
technology, or
надеемся, что
energy
их
efficiency.
количество
And we
будет
hope that the
расти,
number will be
и,
growing,
собственно, рост этих компаний
and the
будет
growth of these
соответствующий.
companies
Мы увидим не одного единорога.
will be relevant, and we will see more
Теперь,
unicorns.
переходя непосредственно
And
к
now,
вопросу про
switching to
развитие
the
молодежного
issue of
предпринимательства,
developing youth
на самом деле для нас это
entrepreneurship,
является важным
to us,
направлением
this is an
деятельности
important
фонда, и
area of
мы
activity.
у нас существуют программы,
We
которые
have
как раз
programs
направлены на
that are
развитие
aimed
молодежного
to develop
предпринимательства.
youth
И
entrepreneurship.
открытый университет
The
Сколково
Open
совместно
University of
с
Skolkovo,
региональными
together
партнерами,
with
с
regional
технопарками,
partners,
участие
Technoparks,
индустриальных
and
компаний
together
как
with
раз
industrial
реализуют эти
companies,
программы.
implement these
Одна из них
programs.
называется
One of
eScale Up,
them
это
is
лаборатория
called
по
Scale
генерации
Up.
идей
It's a
технологических
lab
проектов. То есть мы
of
помогаем, мы работаем с
generating the
студентами
ideas
и
of
помогаем
technological
студентам
projects. We
генерить
work with students and help them to
стартапы
generate
в
startups
соответствии с теми
in
технологическими
compliance with the
форсайтами фонда,
technological
которые существуют.
foresights of the funds that
И
exist.
Соответственно, эти форсайты, они
And
и не только
these
для фонда актуальны, но и в
foresights,
целом
they
по
are
стране.
topical not only for
Вот.
the
И
fund,
вторая
but for the
программа — это
entire
навигатор
country.
инноватор.
And then the
Это
second one
преакселерационная
is
программа для
Navigate
команд и
Innovator, is
проектов
a
на ранних стадиях развития, которая
pre-accelerator
направлена
program for
именно на
teams, which
упаковку
is aimed at packing
технологических
of
проектов и
technological
подготовку к
projects
дальнейшему
and their
получению
preparation for
инвестирования
future
или грантов.
investment and
И,
grants.
соответственно, дальше
And
участники,
the
выпускники
participants and the graduates of this educational program,
участниками
they
Сколково.
become the participants, the residents of Skolkovo.
Такую
Last
программу
week we
совместно с
completed
Якутии.
such
На
program
входе
with Yakutia
подали
Technopark.
более 170
We had
заявок,
over
из которых
170 applications,
132 участника были
and
одобрены в программу.
132
И
have
уже
been
на
selected,
финале
and
ребята
at the final
защитили 13
stage,
проектов.
the
Мы
13 projects
надеемся,
will
что в скором времени
defended,
увидим
and we hope
эти
that
проекты
soon we
среди
will see
участников
these
Сколково.
projects as Skolkovo participants.
Юлия,
Thank you,
Вопросы,
colleagues.
если есть время.
Юлия, огромное спасибо. Я
Yulia,
надеюсь,
thank you very
что
much.
Сколково
I
сможет
hope that
присоединиться к
Skolkovo
тем инициативам,
will
к тем
be able
проектам,
to join
которые,
the
может быть, мы
initiatives
сегодня
that
выработаем.
we
И
might work
сейчас я
out
бы хотела
today.
передать слово
Now I would
нашему
like to give the
модератору
floor to our moderator,
Екатерине
Ekaterina
Сафрониевой, PhD-кандидату и научному
Safronievo,
сотруднику
PhD
Университета ВАСА
candidate
Финляндия.
from
Екатерина,
Vasa
пожалуйста.
University in Finland. Ekaterina,
Всем
please.
добрый день.
Hello, everybody.
Вам солнечный привет из Финляндии.
Hello from
Стартап-экосистема
Finland.
Финляндии, она развивается
In
быстрыми
Finland,
темпами,
the
и
startup
финские
ecosystem
стартапы
is
эффективно привлекают венчурный капитал. И сегодня регион
developing
Хельсинки является
quickly,
одним из
and
лидеров
they
по
use
искусственному интеллекту.
venture capital,
Также
and
в
they
Финляндии
also are
проводится
leaders
ежегодно
in
слэш,
artificial
один из самых больших мероприятий по
intelligence, and
по
also
стартапам.
they
И сегодня у
hold the
нас
annual
спикером выступает Яна Перту, представитель Центра
event
инноваций
on
ВАСы.
startup. And today we have a speaker, Janne Pertu, who represents Vasa Innovation Center. Thank you very much for this invitation. Ekaterina, I hope you are doing well in Yakutia. I've never been there, but I hope that sometime I will be able to visit. I would like to say a few words
Innovation Center. Подождите.
about Vasa Innovation Center.
Вот, это значит, то, что мы занимаемся в
This is what we do
инновационном центре ВАСы.
at Vasa Innovation Center.
Такой маленький проект, как
It's a
трансформировать
small
государственный
project,
и частный
transformation of
и
public and
переосмысление общества
private
от
sector, and
государства
rethinking
до
of
человека.
society from state to
Мы,
human.
у нас есть
We
несколько
have
проектов.
several projects
такие энергетические системы,
like
от
energy
продукции
systems,
до консюмера.
from products
У
to
нас один
consumers.
большой проект
We have
Energy Sampo.
a large project, Energy
Это
Sampo.
Всеогородная
It's
система,
a
где
comprehensive
электричество
system where
производится как,
electricity is produced
возобновляемой энергией
from
и
renewable
сохраняется
energy sources and is
в форме
preserved
водород и
as
тепло,
hydrogen
например.
and heat.
Еще тут много исследований и разработки,
Also,
связанных
we
с
have
этим.
a lot of research
У
and
нас работают
development
целый ряд компаний в ВАСе.
with a
Например,
number of companies at
Vertila
Vasa,
и
such
другие.
companies as Vertila and others.
Вот. И мы, конечно, открыты, и мы хотим,
Of course,
чтобы
we
и,
are
например,
open.
Сколково,
We want
как-то
Skolkovo
чтобы у нас был какой-то связь.
to somehow connect with us.
Еще у нас такой проект Кваркен.
Also, we
EGTC.
have a project
Это
Kvarken
европейская
EGTC,
группировка территориальной
which
кооперации,
is a
где мы
European
соединяем
group of
частей
territorial
Финляндии, Швеции и
cooperation, where we
Норвегии
bring together the
один
parts of Finland,
новый
Sweden,
вид,
and Norway
как
as
гибридное
a
государство.
hybrid
Это не
country, a hybrid
революция,
state.
не боитесь.
It's not a
Это просто
revolution,
такой
don't be afraid.
план
It's just a
разумные
plan
планы,
of realizing some reasonable plans,
экономически и социально разумные планы,
some economical and socially
из-за
reasonable
старые
plans
границы и
that are
налоговые
impossible
системы
because
и
of the old frontiers,
за-
borders, and tax
государственные законы
legislation.
невозможны, но это нам помогает. У нас, например, в царском времени много
For
хорошего.
example, we had a lot of under
но,
Tsarism time,
Мне кажется, уже
but I
пора
think
немножко
that it's now time
как мы
to rethink
устроим
how we can
мир.
make the world.
Еще у нас такой
Also, we have a large project called Culture 3.0.
3.0. Загуглите, это очень интересно.
You can Google it, it's very interesting.
Это, короче говоря, в центре тут сплоченность,
Focuses on
инклюзивная
cohesion
культура.
and inclusive
Но
culture.
еще быстренько говорю о Vasa
And
Future Festival, где
Vasa Future
focus
Festival,
в
which
разработку,
focuses on
не
the development.
люди, мы приглашаем людей
We
сюда
invite
не
people
только
here
разговаривать,
not only to
реально
talk,
что-нибудь
but
делать.
to do something real.
Мы хотим сюда
We want
мозги.
brain
У нас
here.
24 рабочие
We
группы,
have 24 working groups
которые работают с
that
новыми
work with
технологиями,
new
с
technologies
вопросами,
and
которые касаются культуры,
culture,
экономика.
economy.
Еще у нас новый вид
Also,
медиа,
we have a
Science
new
Channel.
type of media, Science Channel.
Говорим о важные
Where we discuss
и свежие
important and latest
наука.
issues of science.
Ну, тоже хочу сказать пару
I
слов
also wanted to say a couple of words about the peculiarities of startup ecosystems in Finland and Vasa.
Екатерина говорила о
Ekaterina has already
Slush.
mentioned about slush,
совсем там работают студенты,
which
как
employs
сказать,
students,
добровольцы. Это они
volunteers,
совсем 100% устроят. И
and
у нас такие
this is
студенческие
done 100% by these volunteer
Например,
student
самое
communities.
известное, наверное, Alto ES. И у
The
нас тут
most well-known of
Васе,
them is
Vasa.
Alto ES, or in
Еще
Vasa
во
we
Васе
have
у нас
Vasa
происходит
ES.
такой
Also in Vasa we have
что
such a phenomenon
мы соединяемся,
when we
потому что Васа слишком маленький
come
город,
together
чтобы мы
because Vasa is
соревновались
too
друг с другом.
small
мы
town to
скоро
compete.
или уже практически так, что Васа один большой
And we can say that now Vasa
акселератор.
is like one big accelerator.
Это все. Спасибо.
Okay, thank you.
Спасибо большое, Янне.
Thank you,
Особенно
Янне.
спасибо за выступление на русском. Ян у нас
Especially
работал
thank you
в
for
посольстве
speaking
Финляндии
in
в
Russian.
Москве.
Jan worked in the Finnish embassy in Moscow. Yes, cooperation is more important than competition, and Vasa is the energy center of Finland. And the innovative ecosystem, and it involves a lot of student organizations. But according to the International Startup Rating of 2021, Canada ranks 4th in the top 20, and Ottawa is the capital of startup ecosystems of Canada. And today we have Eva Wu from Ottawa.
Thank you, Ekaterina. Yes, I am from Ottawa, but I'm speaking to you folks today from Montreal, Canada. I'm just going to share my screen to show you a presentation that myself as well as the Arctic Youth Network has pulled together for this conference. I wanted to start off by saying thank you very much for inviting us to this conversation. We have a lot of different ideas and plans that we're currently putting together with a lot of our different supporters and collaborators to develop some more support for Arctic entrepreneurship, especially when it comes to youth and defining what that means for youth in the Arctic. As a background, my role in this organization is as a managing director for the Arctic Youth Network. I'll provide a little more context about what our organization actually does, so that in the case that you have questions, you can feel free to reach out to myself or to any of our representatives to really help you. So basically what we are looking at in the Arctic Youth Network is creating a community of capacity building and recognition when it comes to entrepreneurship. Hearing all your perspectives from Finland to Russia to Alaska, entrepreneurship definitely takes a variety of different forms when you cross different geographic or cultural boundaries within the Arctic region. But one thing that we do have in common is that entrepreneurship in the North needs to get redefined and also is very different from what we see in the southern parts of our world, whether that be the amount of resources that youth have access to or the resources and markets that their products can sort of reach to. There's a lot of different questions that need to be asked in terms of how do we enable a new generation of entrepreneurs to really be engaged and drive Arctic economic development. So because of these questions and because of all the demands that we've seen coming from our network as a youth network overall, we've been working with our partners to develop what you see here, the Arctic Youth Entrepreneurship Network. So for a little bit of context, I'm just going to describe the Arctic Youth Network overall. It's an organization that we founded back in 2018 and is a registered not-for-profit organization in Canada, but with a global scope. So we have over 650 members right now, and that's sort of the passive engagement that we've harnessed in the last 2 years. But these are the active members who are constantly contributing to our growth and to the work that we've had. And these individuals represent all the different Arctic regions, as well as different Southern interests that are willing to be allies in the different work that we do. And specifically, the elements that we work on is building leadership through capacity and opportunities. So how do we support youth leaders in developing their own skills and knowledge, as well as their networks? How do we amplify voices across borders and cultures? So how do we bring people together to work together, as well as to learn from each other and the experiences of other Arctic peoples? And finally, we also support the learning and collaboration of different initiatives. So providing youth with a platform that enables them to work together, be it on conferences or policy proposals or whatever interest they may have, since we are an organization that is issue agnostic, but support youth in whatever ventures they want to achieve. So right now, the Arctic Youth Entrepreneurship Network is sort of in the brainstorming phase with proposals that we've sent out to various partners. So if you Google it, it's not going to come up just yet since it is an internal affair. Sorry, I'm just going to mute that. I didn't realize that was on. Do not disturb. But our current plans for the Entrepreneurship Network is modeled off of a variety of different elements that we currently excel at the Arctic Youth Network. So we have a strong network of collaborations. Some of our partners are on the line today. We have other working groups that are able to support youth be it in mental well-being or in law or in oceans negotiations. We create lots of educational content for our youth to access that enable the skills building and capacity building that I was talking about. We send delegations to a variety of different conferences. I know our members are also present at this conference, as well as soon to be in COP26 out in Glasgow. We have different chapters that operate around the world so that we have region-specific membership and region-specific elements that people can work together, especially when it comes to youth-led activities. And we also have a news platform that is being developed and launched called The Exchange, which enables youth voices to really drive the media that we see about the Arctic, and so that the voices that we hear about the Arctic is representative of the North itself. So when it comes to the entrepreneurship network that we are looking at, we're really trying to redefine what it means to be an entrepreneur in the North, because one of the elements that we have heard from a variety of stakeholders while we were developing this network is basically that Arctic entrepreneurship, especially when it comes to Indigenous peoples, is very different from what we see in the South or in some Northern European countries as well. So we wanted to create a platform that was holistic and inclusive of all of these different perspectives. So one of the ideas that we have come up with is, rather than to start supporting youth when it comes to submitting a proposal or looking for funding for an entrepreneurship idea, we begin our pipeline for Arctic startup way ahead when it comes to gaining interest and harnessing engagement for youth to participate in the entrepreneurship environment. So when they're thinking about, should I get involved in business? Should I look into entrepreneurship? That is where we are targeting our efforts, so we can support them right from the get-go in terms of generating their ideas, generating their business plans, and really beginning the process of reaching out to investors or beginning their research and development phase. That being said, we also support established entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs when it comes to capacity building in our next step as well. So taking all the ideas that the youth have come up with, and in terms of the Indigenous governance models that they have developed, we also support them in further developing these ideas so that we can bring them to market. And this is where this network component of the Arctic Youth Entrepreneurship Network really comes into play. Like, we have hundreds of youth who are already interested in getting involved. How do they work together in a close-knit, tight community so that not only can they share ideas and share successes and failures, like we've heard stories about people saying, in Greenland, you have to buy 6 of everything, because if something in your factory breaks down, you won't be able to get another part of that pipeline for 2 or 3 or 4 months or something, just simply because of the time it takes to transport materials. So how does this type of knowledge get transferred between different organizations as youth are starting to build up these plans? And then at this point, when youth have these ideas and are able to start bringing different projects either to market or to like the growth phase, we want to recognize their success, especially when it comes to branching out beyond our network. One of the elements that we have been very strong at, and we've had teams working on this for months now, is developing an ecosystem of over 3,000 partners and interested parties who would be able to support youth and their ideas for the next step forward. So how do we create an international market for their product? How do we create engagement and awareness of their services? And how do we enable them to be the multi-billion-dollar successes that we've heard about in the first presentation out in Yakutsk? So in terms of awards and in terms of branching out, this is where we really want to recognize their success, including at events where we bring in funding, we bring in venture capitalists to be able to sort of highlight the real players in the Arctic youth entrepreneur space. And finally, the last phase that we are looking at is sort of, what is that continued support? How can we use our social media, our connections, our resources to really build upon their work and keep it sustainable? And how can they educate the next generation of Arctic youth entrepreneurs? So that's sort of where the rest of the Arctic Youth Network comes in and is able to support the participants of this network in the long term. So as I mentioned before, this idea is really an idea right now, but we are in the process of gaining more partners as well as finalizing our funding agreements for this initiative. So stay tuned and follow us on our social media to be able to see the launch of this initiative. We are aiming to be able to get things rolling within the next 4 to 6 months and start bringing in our members to participate. So if you have any questions or want to follow along, I really do welcome you to follow us on Facebook, which you can find at fb.ayn.link, Instagram, or join even our membership group if you're interested in becoming involved. And as always, there's the email that you can reach out to me at if you have any questions. So thank you so much.
Спасибо большое, Ева. Молодежный Северный форум будет сотрудничать с Arctic Youth Entrepreneurship Network. И давайте перейдем к нашему следующему
Now
спикеру.
let's move on to our next speaker. Startup ecosystem in Denmark is focused on this strategy of transfer to renewable energy. And we have here today Celine Malikur representing the University of Copenhagen. She has worked at the Danish embassy in Moscow and in the Danish parliament. So, Celine.
Thank you very much, Ekaterina. Thank you so much for organizing this event and for inviting me to speak. So I will not be speaking, of course, on parts of any public office right now, because now I'm back to studying, but I study political science, and I definitely have a special interest in the Arctic as a region and in climate action in general. So let me just try here and share my screen. Okay. I want to talk to you first about Denmark's green strategy, and then about Denmark's green startup ecosystem. And the reason why I think it's very important to talk about both is that it takes a very ambitious national strategy to create a lucrative environment for green startups, especially because these startups usually need a lot of public funding to succeed. Yes, how do I get there? Okay, so Denmark has a global climate action strategy for a green and sustainable world. And this is a governmental strategy, so I want to try to make it short because I think the forum here is more interested maybe in the startup ecosystem. But Denmark's goal is to be a green frontrunner in global climate action that inspires and encourages the rest of the world. Very ambitious. The strategy even calls Denmark a green superpower. That's up for discussion, but at least, again, an ambitious goal. I can say now that the strategy actually mentions the Arctic, but only once, which means that there is not like a special focus on the Arctic. Some people in this forum, if they read the strategy, might also notice that there is no mention of cooperation with Russia, unfortunately, and there's no mention of the use of nuclear power. The strategy, however, puts forward goals of 70% emissions reductions by 2030 and climate neutrality by 2050. So this makes Denmark one of the most ambitious countries in this matter in the world. The strategy has a lot of focus on the Paris Agreement and the UN sustainability goals, but it also has a lot of focus and points out that it's of course the countries and the regions that are the biggest emissioners at this point that has the most responsibility and has to have the most ambitious climate action plans. But that we also have to have a lot of focus on developing countries, especially rising economies, if we want to reach these ambitious goals on a global level. And then, of course, there's a focus on making the green transition also a basis for creating jobs and and avoiding increasing inequality while doing that. The strategy points out 5 kind of sections: increasing global climate ambition, reduce global greenhouse gas emissions, strengthen focus on climate adaptation and sustainable development, shift financial flows and investment from black to green, and collaborate with the private sector on green solutions. So the Danish government's climate diplomacy efforts must be conducted with the global community through alliances, especially with the European Union, but definitely also with other countries and non-state actors. Non-state actors, for example, some of these very ambitious and good presentations that we had today about different actors, they have a very big role in trying to demonstrate a global potential in putting green solutions into practice, and also pressuring governments to take on more ambitious goals when it comes to climate change. So it's a priority for Denmark that all of the society contributes to climate effort, including sectors and activities that are not part of the Paris Agreement, for example, international aviation and shipping, which accounts for about 4 to 5% of global greenhouse gas emissions at present. Denmark is actually the world's 7th largest exporter of green maritime technologies, so Denmark might have a unique opportunity here to try to influence technology and development in this area. Denmark will also promote knowledge about urban mobility internationally, including cycling. People who've been to Denmark know that bicycling and bicycles are to see everywhere in this country. So it's a part of the strategy to try to promote solutions in urban planning, for example, to make citizens choose bicycling over cars, for example. So we must address the barriers experienced by business when they export green goods and services, for example, by limiting tariffs on green goods and services, promoting green standards and relevant labeling schemes, ensuring better access to data for green transition, and creating opportunities for large-scale testing and demonstration of innovative solutions. And I might add there that it's of course also important to create, for example, cooperation on the youth level and educational level. So this is a map pointing out which countries that Denmark currently works with in this as part of this climate action plan. Unfortunately, as you see, Russia is not pointed out, but that might change in the future. So, for example, Denmark is working with China on creating cleaner air, and it's working with South Africa on improving water supply. It's also working with Brazil on a lot of digitalization projects, and those are just like yes, one of some of many different cooperation that Denmark has currently. So to point out that international cooperation is a top priority. Yes, moving on to the Danish ecosystem for startups in green energy and environmental technology. What I'm going to say now is based on a report that Green Tech Challenge made in 2019. They point out 3 main obstacles for green startups: challenges in finding risk-willing capital, lack of involvement from public utility companies in the ecosystem, and that other surrounding countries are moving fast with political action. That is, of course, good on a global level, but it's just to point out that Denmark and probably also a lot of countries have to step up in making political initiatives. Yes, so the report actually finds that if we compare the Danish green startup ecosystem with the European ecosystems, we unfortunately see that we are falling a bit behind, for example, in comparison with Finland and Sweden, present here today, and Germany, France, Norway, and Great Britain, for example. So even though Denmark is very, very ambitious, there's definitely still areas to work on to make it lucrative for green startups to be successful and into the market on a greater scale. I'm sorry that this PowerPoint is in English. I hope that that people will just be able to follow what I say instead of if it's too hard to follow. But anyways, the green startup ecosystem in Denmark consists of a long series of initiatives, really. Most of them are in one way or the other financed either by the state, the Danish state, or by the European Union or by philanthropy. Entrepreneur and office communities, such as, for example, Bloxhub, I don't know if you know that, but it is quite famous, and university environments, just as we heard, for example, from the Arctic Youth Network, venture capital funds and other driving forces are all part of making green startups viable and competitive. So I just brought you guys some examples of accelerators. I don't want to go too much into detail because I know we also have a time limit here, but basically just accelerators that bring together startup companies and try to make it easier for them to get investments and funding. I participated myself in the Tech Barbecue Conference. It's a very, very cool initiative once a year. And also another thing that I wanted to point out that I didn't put on this PowerPoint show is a new initiative called Unleash. They're having an innovation lab on Greenland next year and aims at bringing startup companies to Greenland and like pair them with good investment opportunities. This is different sectors with Denmark, the darker blue, and then compared with the other countries in this report. And as you see, Denmark has an advantage in information technology, which is not very surprising because it's actually, it might be more risky to do a hardware startup. So the other spheres are waste management, food agriculture, smart cities, education, mobility, transportation, energy efficiency, energy storage, energy production, green manufacturing, sustainable housing, and air management. So there are a lot of yes.
We have a time limit.
Oh, sorry. Okay, moving on. So a lot of challenges, but the one thing I want to point out the most is probably to raise the necessary capital. In Denmark specifically, for example, startups cannot pay, has hard time paying wages, but a lot of the funding they can get require them to pay wages. So that might be a problem. And some of the recommendations that this report has that probably also can work as inspiration for other countries and startup spheres. Yeah, so public micro tenders. Public authorities place high demands on, for example, supply security, which is an obstacle for startups. So micro tenders might be a good solution here. Then better condition for investment that could, for example, be done with more ambitious national strategies, and then increased monitoring of the ecosystems for green Danish startups, for example, to get better data on what works and what does not. Yes, I think that's it. Sorry for going over time, Yekaterina. I hope you guys enjoyed anyways, and thank you very much for listening.
Селин, большое спасибо за рассказ об инновационной экосистеме Дании и за то, что выделили в особое место зеленые технологии. Дорогие друзья, я хочу сообщить, что к нам присоединился Николай Викторович Корчунов,
Ambassador at Large of the Russian Foreign Ministry,
Совета
Arctic official from the Russian
Николай
Federation.
Викторович, нам всем очень интересно
Nikolai Viktorovich, we are very interested in learning about how you see the development of technologies and startups in the Arctic and in the North.
Прошу
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to warmly welcome all the participants of this roundtable. I consider this roundtable is one of the most interesting and most important one within the Northern Forum agenda, because that is about the future, that is about the youth generation at all society, all countries of the Arctic Council are already entering the fourth industrial society. It means that most disruptive technology getting more and more applicable in high north, and this Afroization and the digitalization and digital society is relatively new but very important phenomena for high north, with the long distances, with the many issues to be resolved and should be resolved thankful to the broadband and advanced telecommunication and networking and connectivity. And with that, we also, what we see is that the future of the sustainable economic development of the Arctic, that is the smart machines, smart technologies, nature and resource saving technologies. So it means that the development of the Arctic should be put on a highly sophisticated and technologically platform. And who will do that? Of course, first of all, that is the youth. And one of the objectives arriving with the ministerial declaration and strategic plan adopted in Reykjavik is the goal to diversify the economic activities there. And for that, we need the more IT, more youth cooperation on IT basis, on youth entrepreneurship, and I hope that particularly this session, of course, the exchange of views on the specific national policy with regard of startup, and of course they are important, but what at least I would like to see as a result of this session is a kind of initiative of the Arctic states aimed to give an impetus to youth entrepreneurship through the startup challenge games, through the any projects and or joint programs on human acceleration, business idea acceleration, startup weekend or days or other so associated with this event. And it is very good that you have organized such a session, and I am looking forward to see the development of that. And I'm very glad that here in this session participating the chair of the experts group for social and economic issue within the Sustainable Development Working Group of the Arctic Council, Yulia Zvarikina, and as well as the representative of the Moscow Business School, Skolkovo. I see that if we being united and consolidated around these goals and an idea, we could get much and a lot to our youth in all regions of the Arctic and in all countries. And with that, I would like to wish you all success and encourage to continue the talks on that very important matter. Thank you so much.
Спасибо большое, Николай Викторович. Спасибо за
Thank you very
поддержку
much, Mr.
инициативы по
Korchunov, for supporting
стартапам
the
и
initiative
технологиям
of startups and the technologies in the
В
North
мировом
and in the
рейтинге
Arctic.
стартапов и систем Великобритания
Great
занимает
Britain
второе место,
ranks
и
second
особое
in the
внимание
world
уделяется
startup
технологиям, связанным
ranking, and
с
special
изменением
attention
климата.
is
И
paid to
сегодня у
the
нас
technologies
Жень
related to
Минву,
climate
научный
change.
сотрудник университета
So today we
Ридинг из
have
Англии.
Zhen Wu,
Zhen,
researcher from the University of Reading in England.
Can you see my screen and hear my voice?
Yes, we can hear
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Perfect.
So thanks for inviting us to this wonderful forum, and I will give a very brief introduction of a very powerful remote sensing technology for the applications of the climate monitoring. So we know permafrost is melting globally, and you guys live in the continuous permafrost cities, so you know it. So this is a GPS station measurement of the permafrost surface. You can see this it has kind of seasonal variation and also long trend subsiding. This is because melting of ice within the permafrost. So it has consequences, we know, and on the other hand, it has carbon in permafrost. It will release from melting permafrost, and which will increase the situation of warm climate. And we know for GPS, we can only observe a point of permafrost, but for a large scale permafrost region, how we do that? And okay, here we have a very powerful remote sensing technology. It's INSAR, so we can monitor a very broad permafrost region and see its change under this rapid warming climate. So this is kind of study area and in the North Alaska and underlain by continuous permafrost. And this is our result. This is a permafrost deformation velocity map from 3 years observation. So from 2017 to 2019. So you can see this, the red means subsiding and blue is kind of uplift. So this is the 4-year velocity map from 2017 to 2020. So you can see the 3 velocity map has more subsidence than the 3-year velocity map. So we think it may be caused by the temperature anomaly in 2020. We all know there's a heat wave in Arctic last year. So here's we selected 3 points, so you can see the time series variation over time. So in the year 2020, there's a very obvious subsiding trend. So in a very recent study, some research they found that we got kind of the deformation of permafrost is correlated well with their carbon storage. So maybe in the future we can simulate the carbon mass or carbon storage and carbon emission of permafrost use this technology too. And here's a kind of original case study recently I have done. So you can see this is the continuous permafrost distribution over the Tibet Plateau in China. And here we have done this application over very broad area. So you can see, I will show you a few times. So you can see over this region and the region of the center of Tibet. So you can see permafrost is disturbed very significantly under the warming climate. So this is kind of 6-year measurement from satellite. And I still need more further investigation of the reason why. And you can see some permafrost regions has more subsiding and non-permafrost regions is quite stable. And on the other hand, we also use this technology for peatland monitoring. So recently we have done the peatland deformation measurement over the UK and the entire Ireland. So we do some consultation for the carbon market, so people can trade in carbon within the market. And the basic point of this technology is because we found the carbon emission status of the peatland is correlated with its deformation, and our technology insert can use to measure this kind of deformation. And yeah, that's all a very brief introduction of this technology. So thanks for listening. And if you got some questions, please, you can contact me through the emails. And yeah, thank you again.
Спасибо. Но основная тема повестки
Thank you.
Северного форума
So the major topic of the agenda of the Northern Forum is the climate change and permafrost thawing, and we are interested in the technologies used. And so our next speaker is from Sweden, Alexey Fedorov, a researcher from the University of Lund, who is going to speak about the technologies that influence on the health in the Arctic. Hello, everybody from Sweden. Today I'm going to speak about the technologies. Now we talk about sustainability and ecology of the Arctic, but we forget that the technologies that we are based on the technologies that we use to go green world. On the example of electricity, you cannot imagine yourself without electricity. Or, for example, digitalization. As long as I work in Lund University, I research digitalization and I research 5G. So we have electricity as some sort of technology that allows us to live, and it's some basic level that is given to the entire world. With 5G, we have the same vision. Soon it will become just as basic as the electricity and the pure water, and the technology of 5G will allow us to digitalize all data and to work efficiently with such data. And I believe that digitally, if we can reach for the remote regions of our Arctic, we will be able to monitor the changes in the Arctic from the economical point of view as well. I have chosen this topic of 5G. You know that Finland and Sweden have historically been the leaders in the development of industrial technologies, and the idea is that these wireless technologies, they are our future. At least I think so. They will be just the same element of our life as electricity or pure water. And to prove that, you can see these great statistics that shows when we had this mobile internet. We have had wireless connection since long ago, but you remember the first LTE phones in Moscow. I bought my first smartphone and enjoyed the speed of 70 megabytes a second. And then the number of users grew. It fell down to 5 megabits a second. So on this graph, you can perfectly see that the number of people using smartphones is growing, and the number of people has reached its maximum. Now we can say that each person has a smartphone. it seems that there is no area to grow. But what we have done in 5G is that we are going to connect
То есть интернет
more
вещей появится с
Internet
5G.
things
То есть
with
вместо того, чтобы
5G.
увеличивать
So
количество
instead of increasing the number of users,
будем увеличивать
we
количество
will
вещей,
increase the
которые
number of
звучат. И в
things.
будущем
And
исключением
in the
будут
future,
вещи, которые не подсоединены
the
к сети.
unconnected
Сейчас, например, у нас
things will be
есть
seen
исключение.
as
Это что вещь подключена к сети, а в будущем
exclusions.
исключением будет то, что вещь не подключена к сети. И вот это вот, и мне кажется, вот эта вот часть, она очень сильно
So
повлияет на развитие дальних регионов, на развитие,
think that this will
на доставку сервиса в дальние регионы, такие как арктическая часть России,
influence the
и
deliveries
арктические
to
части,
remote
в Швеции,
areas
Финляндии,
like in
на
Russia or in Finland or in Sweden or Norway.
И если посмотреть со
And
стороны
if you look
экономической стороны, с
from
бизнес-стороны, то
business side,
ясно
then
видно из
you can
исторического, так сказать,
see
развития всех этих беспроводных сетей, то, что
that
беспроводные
historically
сети,
the
они
development of all
внедряются
these
во все
wireless
сферы нашей жизни.
systems, they penetrate
И
in all
ожидания от
areas of our
технологий 5G,
lives. And
в том,
the
что, опять-таки,
expectations
все
of
вещи будут подключены к
5G,
сети,
that everything
все
will be
будет
connected
работать
to it.
через с помощью электричества, и все данные будут передаваться с помощью беспроводной
All
сети.
data will
Это,
be
опять-таки, позволит достичь
wireless.
регионов,
And
которые
again,
очень
it
сложно достичь с
will
помощью
help to reach the
проводов.
regions that are
Вот.
very
Но как бы через
hard to
беспроводные
access
сети мы
with
сможем доставить
wires.
интернет во все точки
But
мира.
through wireless
Вот.
connection, we will be able
Что
to
это нам
deliver
дает?
internet
Это
everywhere.
дает
So
огромный
what it gives?
потенциал для
It gives
развития
us a great
малого
potential
бизнеса.
for the
То
development of
есть
small business.
уже сейчас,
Now,
мне кажется, местные
I think
девелоперы,
local
допустим,
developers
из России,
from Russia,
например, на примере Якутии, если посмотреть, то у нас есть очень
like in
хорошие
case of Yakutia,
кадры
we have good
по производству контента для
cases of producing
виртуальных
contents
миров.
for
Вот. И
virtual
так как технология 5G нам позволит
worlds.
иметь
And as long
большую
as
доступность,
5G will
большую
allow
скорость,
us to have more accessibility and higher speed, all those augmented reality, they will be in great
И поэтому
demand.
мне кажется, что
And
конкретно здесь и
that's why
сейчас,
I
чтобы
think
развивать
that here and
бизнес,
now to develop
на
business,
примере региона Якутии, вот, мне бы хотелось сказать, что
I would
вот,
like to say that
производство контента
the
для
production
виртуальных
of
миров,
contents,
3D-контента,
of
в
3D
котором у нас
contents
уже
for
есть
virtual
экспертиза,
worlds where we have
гейм-девелоперы,
expertise,
дизайнеры.
game
Вот,
developers,
то есть здесь и сейчас уже
and
можно начинать
designers.
развивать
Here
бизнес
and now
в
we
этом
can
направлении с помощью
start developing
для
businesses
виртуальной реальности, которая будет
for virtual reality, for
возможностью
augmented
при
reality,
технологиях 5G.
that will be
Вот.
possible
И
with
если мы
5G
говорим
technologies.
про умные города,
If we talk about
то
smart cities,
опять-таки,
then
так как все
again,
вещи будут подключены,
as all things will
технология
be
5G позволит
connected,
подключать
the
все вещи,
5G will
и
allow to connect
города
all
можно
things, and
сделать
our
более
cities
безопасными,
will be more
более
safe,
зелеными,
more
опять-таки,
green,
вот, более зелеными и более дружелюбными,
and more
жизненными для людей.
people friendly.
Более того, я бы хотел еще
Moreover,
поднять вопрос.
I would like to
Все мы
raise the
разговариваем
issue of
про CO2 emission, то есть
CO2
углекислые выбросы, но тем не менее, если мы рассматриваем беспроводные
if
сети,
we
то
look
имеет
at
смысл обратить
wireless
внимание на электромагнитные
connections, then
загрязнения.
we have to
Электромагнитное загрязнение
focus on electromagnetic emissions.
базовых станций стоят друг рядом,
If there are two operators of basic stations are close to each
рядом
other,
друг с другом, то они
they
электромагнитное загрязнение от этих двух станций становится больше.
there
Вот.
is
Идея
more
в том, что
electromagnetic, and we could avoid this overlapping of
тем
networks
самым уменьшить
and
потребление
thus
энергии.
reduce the consumption of energy by these basic stations.
Вот. Такой вот фактор. И
So
на
that's the
этом
factor.
сегодня у у меня все.
And
Спасибо за
thank
ваше
you
внимание.
for
И
your
если есть вопросы,
attention.
то
And if
задавайте.
you have questions, you can
Спасибо огромное,
ask
Алексей, за
them.
то, что
Thank you very
нашли
much,
время подключиться
Alexei,
сегодня к
for
нам. Действительно,
finding
беспроводные
time
сети и
to
те вещи, о
join
которых
us.
говорил
Yes, so
Алексей,
all
они
these
особенно
wireless
важны для
things
Севера и Арктики.
mentioned by Alexei,
Сейчас
they
я бы
are
хотела
indeed
передать слово следующему
important for the
спикеру,
North
Василию
and the
Ефимову,
Arctic.
директору Фонда
Now I would
развития
like to give the
инноваций
floor to
Республики
Vasily
Саха-Якутия и
Yefimov,
генеральному
the
директору
director of
венчурной компании
Yakutia
«Якутия».
Innovation Development
Василий,
Fund
пожалуйста.
and Yakutia Venture Company. Yes.
Здравствуйте, участники
Good evening,
сегодняшнего мероприятия.
Savina.
Большое
Hello,
спасибо
the
за возможность
participants.
выступить.
Thank
Ну
you
и
for
первый
this
слайд, он
opportunity to
несколько уже
speak.
раскрывает суть моей презентации.
So on
Это
this slide,
как
you
раз
can
таки
see
тот
the essence
возможный
of my
проект, о котором говорил
presentation. This
Николай
is a
Викторович,
possible
проект, который, возможно,
project
объединит
that
все страны
was mentioned by
Арктики.
Mr. Korchunov
Вкратце
that
расскажу про
could
Фонд
bring
развития
together
инноваций, что это
all
за
Arctic
организация. Она была
countries. So
учреждена
what
венчурной
is this
компанией Якутия и технопарком. Это институты развития
Innovation
инновационных индустрий
Development
Республики
Fund?
Саха-Якутия. Мы были созданы в соответствии с
We were
149 указом
established
главы республики.
according
Ну, мы
to the
работаем по
decree
модели
of the
endowment
head
фонда.
of Yakutia,
И это
and we
некоммерческая
work
организация.
as an
И наш
endowment
фокус
fund.
основной
This
это
is a
так называемая
non-profit
предпосылная
organization.
стадия стартапов. И наш
So
фокус
our
это
focus is a
IT.
pre-seed
Один из
stage,
проектов наших
and
основных, который
our
мы
focus
запустили еще
is
в 2019
IT.
году по инициативе Министерства
One of
инноваций
our
и Республики
major
Саха-Якутия, это
projects is
стартап-экспедиция.
startup
Основная его цель задача
expedition,
была в том,
and the
чтобы
main task was
посетить все
to
11
visit
городов,
all
11 столиц, на тот момент их было 11,
11
сейчас их
capitals.
стало больше,
Now there are
что-то
more
сильно также к Дальнему Востоку, Бурятии и
because
Забайкалье.
Buryatia
Мы
and
посетили все
Transbaikalia
столицы, рассказали про
have
нашу
joined
экосистему,
our
объездили,
district.
получается, все регионы
So we
вместе с
visited
нашими
all
партнерами
regions
Дальневосточным
and
фондом
we
Сколково,
told about
давали обратную связь
our
экспертную стартапам. И
systems,
также это было
and
в рамках
we did it
формирования
together with
пайплайна
Skolkovo, and it
дальневосточного, да,
was
для нашего
also
фонда
within
развития
the
инноваций. И мы действительно
framework
нашли
of
стартапы,
shaping
и
a
стартапы в
pipeline
Арктике
of
есть, мы их
startups.
видели,
There are
и
startups in
некоторые
the
даже и
Arctic. We have
профинансировали.
seen them,
В итоге мы
and
профинансировали 3
we
проекта.
have funded
В
some of them, 3
2020 году мы
projects. In
переформатировали
2020, we
стартап-экспедицию,
reshaped this
в связи с
startup
пандемией
expedition due
COVID-19,
to the pandemic.
перешли полностью в онлайн
We went
и
fully online,
нашли индустриальных партнеров,
and
так
we
называемых.
found
Нашими
so-called
партнерами
industrial
выступили компании
partners. They
«Северсталь»,
are
«Индравер» и
Severstal,
«Алроса IT». Для нас это очень важный стратегический партнер,
Indriver,
потому
and
что, как вы многие
Alrosa
знаете,
IT. This
33%
is a
акций компании
very
принадлежит республике и
important
районам
partner
республики.
to us because
И
you
это наш
know
такой
that
основной стратегический
30%
партнер, у
of
нас
their
впервые произошла вот такая
shares
с ними
belong to
коллаборация.
our
Что
republic.
мы делали? Мы
What we have
определили
done
вместе с
is
нашими партнерами
that
задачи,
we have
конкретные,
set
которые
some
вот требовались
specific
в
tasks
рамках вот реализации их
within
стратегии, в
the
рамках вот цифровой трансформации и
implementation
так далее.
of this
Вот. И
digital
подобрали
transformation
153
strategy,
проекта,
and
из
we
них
selected
около 17 уже вот
153
пошли на
projects,
следующую стадию,
and
это вот
some 17 of
пилотирование.
them have been
Ну
selected for,
и благодаря
well, as
2020
pilot
году,
projects.
ну, несмотря на то, что мы полностью перешли в
In
онлайн,
spite of
география у
this
нас, конечно,
full
расширилась.
online,
В
we
этом,
have
естественно, было всего,
enlarged our
ну,
geography.
как я сказал, более 150 заявок
We had
из
over
40 городов и
150
34
applications
регионов
from
Российской
40
Федерации.
cities
Но
and
на этом
34
мы не
regions
хотели
of Russia.
останавливаться, потому что
But
мы
we
уже
didn't want
почувствовали
to
вот этот
stop
масштаб,
there
поняли то, что мы
because we
можем
could
реализовывать
feel the
достаточно масштабные
scale,
проекты,
and we understood
находясь
that
даже
we
вот в
could
городе Якутске,
implement
и эти
large-scale
проекты могут
projects
реализовываться
being in
на территории всей
Yakutsk,
нашей страны.
and they can
И
be
на
implemented
2021
in the
год
whole
мы
country.
запланировали
And so for
масштабировать стартап-экспедицию,
2021, we plan
сделать
to
ее уже
upscale
Для нас
our
это тоже
startup
важно, потому что для нас
expedition to
это
make
очередной
it
шаг вперед,
Arctic
уже
because it's
программу
another
хотим
step
развивать на
forward,
международном уровне,
because
и,
we
конечно,
want
хотелось бы это
to
все сделать на базе
uh,
Арктического совета. Ну и вот
to
организации, которые
develop it
сегодня выступали, на самом деле
internationally
очень было
based
интересно
on
послушать
the Arctic
The Arctic
Council.
Youth Entrepreneurship Network, потому что видно,
It
что
was
наши
very
миссии вот
interesting
где-то
to
очень похожи.
listen
Ну и
to
других
the
спикеров, безусловно. И мне кажется, то, что
Arctic
это
Youth
такого рода проекты, они
Entrepreneurship
могли бы действительно
Network
также
because I
выйти в
think
наши
that
страны,
we
как я
have some
сказал.
similar missions,
Пол
and others
Арктика
as
это
well.
вот место для совместной
As
работы, чем мы
Paul
100%
Fu said,
согласны.
is that the
И в рамках
Arctic is
нашей
a
арктической
territory
стартап-экспедиции
of
мы хотим
joint work, and And within this
все страны
Arctic
Арктики,
Startup Expedition, we would
обменяться
like to
опытом,
visit all
найти
Arctic
стартапы для решения
countries
тех или иных задач.
to
Так что вот мы
exchange
как регион также могли
experiences
бы выставить
and to
какую-то
find some
свою задачу, да,
startups,
озвучить проблематику, ну и,
because we also
соответственно,
could tell about our
страны, вот, партнеры,
projects,
организации, участники, они могли бы
problems,
тоже вот
and
помочь
our
нам с
partners could help us with
поиском, скаутингом вот этих проектов.
scouting these high-tech
Соответственно,
projects.
география, как я
So the
сказал,
geography,
это 8
as
стран,
I said,
страны Арктического
includes
совета.
the
Мы
Arctic
планируем
Council countries.
также привлечь
We
различные
also
организации,
plan to
которые
involve
это университеты,
different
Северный форум.
organizations,
Также,
universities,
конечно,
the
хотелось
Northern
бы привлечь
Forum,
и финансовые
and we
какие-то
would
структуры, да,
also
которые
like
могли
to
бы
involve
финансировать,
some
чтобы это было не
financial
просто в конкурсе каких-то
structures.
презентаций проектов,
So
так называемых питчей,
for
но
it
чтобы
not
это
to
вот
be
было
just
все-таки
a
имело
contest of
какие-то вот
pitches,
финансовые также интересы,
but also
иначе
to have some
и местное
financial
финансирование, либо
interest,
выручка
because
там, да, либо
startups
привлечение
need
инвестиций,
some
вот. И, конечно, хотелось
funds.
бы, мы видим вот в качестве
And
потенциальных
we
партнеров
see as
это
potential
крупные
partners
корпорации.
large
И
corporations.
в рамках вот
And
продвижения
within
арктической
promoting of
стартап-экспедиции
this
планируется
the
создать
Arctic
мероприятие, вот также бесплатно, о котором
startup
Екатерина говорила.
expeditions
Ну, и
slash
хотели бы найти, это все
and
направлено для того, чтобы мы могли найти партнеров. Вот, и
we
поэтому
aim
все
to
вот те
find
организации,
partners.
которые сегодня
So
выступали,
the
представители организации, если
organizations
вам интересно,
that
потому что мы
spoke
сейчас
today,
только
if you
формируем
are
эту повестку, у нас
interested,
пока что нету четкого
we
отраслевого
still
фокуса. Сейчас,
don't
конечно,
have
очень важная тема — это изменение климата,
specific like
экология.
branch-to-branch focus. Maybe we could altogether
решения
find
вот
some
конкретных вот задач,
solutions
связанных
for
с
some
этой очень
specific
важной на
tasks
текущий момент темой.
related
Потому что
to
вот до этого
this
мероприятия я также вот участвовал
topic.
на
Because
заседании рабочей
before
группы
this
по
event, I also
ESG
attended the
ФАО Алроса. Вот, и действительно, вот
ESG
сегодня такой день у меня ESG.
Alrosa
Но я очень рад, потому
working
что
group. So
действительно
today is
это
the
очень важный такой
ESG
вопрос,
day
который
for me,
требует на
but I'm
самом
very
деле
glad about it
совместного
because
действия,
it's an
каких-то
important
реализации
issue
совместных
that
проектов
requires
всех
the
вот арктических
implementation
регионов.
of some
На
joint
этом все.
projects.
Большое спасибо.
Thank you very much.
Василий, огромное спасибо.
Thank you,
Отдельное
Vasily,
спасибо за предложение конкретного
and for
проекта,
your
да, конкретной
proposal
программы,
of this
которая могла бы
specific
объединить
program that
как
could
всех
bring
спикеров,
together
так и те
both
страны, о которых мы сегодня
all
говорим.
speakers and the
И сейчас я
countries.
бы хотела
And
пригласить
now
следующего
I would
спикера.
like to give the
Это
floor to
Михаил
the
Уксусов,
next
молодежный посланник
speaker.
Российской Федерации по международному сотрудничеству в Арктике.
Михаил
Михаил, пожалуйста.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon and good evening, and thank you for inviting me to participate in this session. I will try to be brief as possible, because I know that we are running out of time. And thank you very much to all of the participants, because all of your presentations were really inspiring and very interesting to learn about your experience and about the initiatives that are taking place in the Arctic regarding the youth agenda. In my very short speech, I would like to touch upon the topic of technologies for the Arctic. And this is something that ideally should become the product of any well-planned startup. And I would like to start with the fact that technology is something that many of us perceive as some kind of hardware or software, which in the context of Arctic is very often associated with economic development of the territory, with the natural resources related business processes, with environmental protection, with the pollution cleanup, with transport, logistics, and so on, many other things. And all of this is undoubtedly extremely important for the sustainable development of the territory, and it creates the potential for the employment in the region, because due to specific climate conditions, the Arctic has always needed high-tech and research-intensive development. However, from the point of youth representative, and this is not only my subjective opinion, I also have the experience of beholding such processes. Such innovations are not always the attractors of young people to the region, and very often they do not determine the Arctic-specific migration processes. And what I mean by this is in particular the outflow of young people from the Arctic, not from all the regions, but from a lot of regions definitely. In other words, youngsters often leave the Arctic regardless of the presence or absence of high-tech industries and employment opportunities in a given territory. And especially as the pandemic has shown, modern technologies allow scaling business processes and transferring them online, which can further probably aggravate the situation with outflow of youth energy from the Arctic, in my opinion. The reasons for the outflow, besides the dissatisfaction with the climate, for example, may be the dissatisfaction with the cultural and social agenda in the area, with urban infrastructure. And for young entrepreneurs, this is probably the lack of sufficient target audience for their businesses. And that is why, in addition to the classical, let's say, understanding of technologies, the Arctic also needs technologies that will make living here more attractive than it is at the moment, and ideally more attractive than the prospect of moving away. And why do we need this? Because without youth and without creative youth, the territory will lose a huge part of human potential, which will negatively affect not only the creative economy, but ultimately also the resource economy and the environment. Such things as smart city technologies, technologies of creative economy cluster, design, communications, and everything that has been touched upon today. Some special forms of organizing public spaces, gastronomic technologies, and many others can become such creative technologies that are the basics for the startups. And what is more, technology can be interpreted not only as a hardware or software, but also as a way of organizing work. Health promotion technologies, technologies for adapting a person to society or to the climate, technologies of psychological well-being, educational technologies, technologies for supporting linguistic diversity, technologies for promoting the culture of indigenous peoples, etc. So, in other words, in my opinion, youth startups in the long term should become a kind of painkillers for other young people in the Arctic. And why do I say long term? Because as I already mentioned, any business needs a target audience, and the target audience needs to be nurtured, fostered, and attracted. And this is not a quick process, in my opinion. So, thank you.
Михаил, огромное спасибо за то, что вы представили, наверное, взгляд многих молодых людей, которые живут непосредственно в Арктике. И надеемся, что те люди, которые сегодня участвуют в данной дискуссии, примут это к сведению для своей работы. И теперь, дорогие друзья, мы бы хотели непосредственно к дискуссии. К сожалению, из-за того, что вначале у нас были небольшие палатки, данная дискуссия получится, наверное, весьма короткой. Но, тем не менее,
will be quite brief, but still I would like to ask our speakers,
как вы думаете, стартапы в Арктике и на севере, это обязательно стартапы и технологии для Арктики?
Are they startups for the Arctic and for the North, or they can be different things?
Так, вижу спикеров на экране, и хотела бы, наверное, спросить, у кого есть желание спросить?
So anybody wants to answer my question or maybe ask something?
Так, вижу Михаил, да.
Okay, Mikhail wants to answer.
I think that my answer will be quite brief. Any business should have a kind of an impact, and well, definitely positive impact on the territory where this business is being established. Otherwise, it may sound like an economic colonialism, right? If you just make money and only pay taxes. Of course, some social and or environmental, preferably together, cultural impact on the territory should be made in the area where this business is being developed, irrespective of the fact what is the target audience. If it is, for example, a tourism industry, then the target audience is people outside the region, but at the same time, the impact will be local. So I think it's both ways. It can be, well, it should be and it must be for the Arctic, but not exclusively for the Arctic.
Спасибо огромное, Михаил. Есть ли кто-то из спикеров, который тоже хочет ответить на данный вопрос? Если нет, я бы хотела передать слово Екатерине. Екатерина.
Да,
Алексей, да,
Yes,
пожалуйста.
I wanted to say a few words. I think that the problem of the Arctic and business in the Arctic is that this market is too small, so it's more reasonable to make business that is meant for the world. So if the entire world will generate budget to this company, then why not? This company could provide jobs and some social services, but to make money outside the Arctic.
То есть можно зарабатывать деньги,
So
не
you
ограничиваясь
can
только
make
арктическими или
money
северными
not
странами и регионами, но
only
при этом
in the Arctic
вносить
or
какой-то
northern
вклад в
regions,
развитие
but to
именно
make some
собственных территорий.
contribution into the development
Спасибо.
of your own
Да, пожалуйста,
territories.
Василий.
Правильный вопрос.
Yes, this is quite a right question. In my opinion, the market has to be global, but depending on the country, not everywhere some support tools are available, and business angels are not available in all regions. So our approach is to give an opportunity. So we cover this gap in Yakutia or in the Far East. We have talents, and we have this entrepreneurship initiative that has to be supported. So I would agree with Alexei that startups should be ready to go to global market because the Arctic market is quite small. But we also have to equal the
Хорошо,
chances.
спасибо большое.
Thank you.
Поддержу Василия в этом вопросе,
I would
поскольку
support Vasily
в течение
here
сегодняшней
because
сессии
during
несколько
today's
спикеров
session, several
говорили о том, что
speakers
как раз-таки в
said
Арктике не
that in the
хватает
Arctic we lack
финансирования, да,
funding
именно таких вот инициатив,
for
стартапов
such
технологических,
initiatives and
и
startups,
не хватает
technological
венчурного инвестирования. Как
startups,
раз-таки,
and
да,
we lack
наверняка связано с тем,
venture
что
funds.
инвесторы не
So I
видят
think that
в
it
Арктике
has to do with the fact that
ну,
investors
большие возможности
don't
в
see
данном
a lot
направлении.
of opportunities
Но
in the
если
Arctic.
применить такой
But
подход,
if we use
то
such approach,
действительно можно
then
зарабатывать для
indeed
Арктики и для
you
Севера за
can
ее пределами.
make money for the Arctic and for the North outside the Arctic. Yeah, to continue the discussion, how to develop a startup ecosystem in the North and how to engage different actors, state, youth, business, universities, and other non-Arctic countries.
Как нам вовлекать другие неарктические страны?
How do we involve in other non-Arctic countries in this networking?
Ева, do you wanna?
Yeva?
Share
Maybe
your
I
vision?
can jump in here. So one of the approaches, at least, that the Arctic Youth Network is looking at is really building those markets alongside the youth who are participating. Like you see it with traditional hunting practices, you see it with sustainable tourism and whatnot. The awareness for the Arctic is growing, but it's still not enough to truly build those international markets that everyone else was talking about, like Alexei and Mikhail were talking about. So engaging youth and also markets from the ground up is sort of the approach that we are looking at to be able to not only have people to receive the products and services, but also for youth to see and be empowered to approach these sort of these businesses as well. So it's a dual relationship that needs to be looked at in order to make a sustainable startup environment, especially in the context of non-technological and non-IT worlds, where things are based more upon what makes the Arctic unique and what is special to Northern peoples as well, to be able to have that pride and have that sense of agency and decolonize the entire Northern business space as well.
I have just a very, very brief comment also on that. Like, I think to be able to build up an Arctic startup ecosystem, we also have to be able to designate certain startups as being Arctic, because right now they are not belonging to the Arctic. They are maybe more national, and we have to start thinking about it and start defining what should be the aims and goals of an Arctic ecosystem and what startups belongs to that ecosystem.
Do you have in your mind examples of such kind of companies or startups?
Well, I have a lot of examples of Danish startups that could definitely also contribute to an Arctic startup ecosystem. So it's just a matter of looking more at cooperation instead of competition. I think already some people already pointed that out. Like, do you want the names of such organizations?
Yes, I was interested.
Yes.
Interested in the names.
There is, for example, this startup called KiteX. They're developing drone wind turbines to shape a future with sustainable energy. You can look at also there's Danish startup companies working a lot with drone systems. What more, like, for example, I'm looking at a list here. Air management, it's called Polynsensio. It's also Danish. So like, what startups do we want to define such an ecosystem? That's just my point.
Yep.
Maybe to add on to that as well, one of the processes that we are looking at is to sort of define what this Arctic entrepreneur space would look like, be it being driven by a team of majority Arctic residents or coming from an Arctic nation with interests in the North. Those are some of the questions that the Arctic Youth Entrepreneurship Network is looking at. And we have worked closely in collaboration with groups such as the Arctic Future Challenge, which ran last year and will be running again, regarding the sort of nomination process and recognition process of Arctic ecosystem partners as well as entrepreneurs, as well as drawing inspiration from the Arctic Inspiration Prize that's located in Canada for social entrepreneurship and sort of not-for-profit initiatives. So I'd be happy to chat about this following the call about defining these sort of delineations, especially since that's something that we aim to publish and release publicly within the next 4 to 6 months.
Okay, thank you. Who wants to add? Кто хочет добавить?
Anybody wants to add?
Can I ask a question, not the comment? It's a question to probably all the speakers, and especially those who worked with the real startups. Have you ever had, well, not experience, but in your experience, do you have to break the existing cultural attitudes that exist in a given community where the startup is being developed? Or usually startups are perceived very smoothly by the community? I'm speaking about the Arctic, from your experience.
На самом деле очень интересный вопрос.
Yes, I think that this is a very interesting question.
Пожалуйста.
Да. Ну, во-первых,
Well,
с ответа на этот вопрос.
I start with answering this
На самом
question.
деле стереотипы, конечно, есть.
Of course, there are some
В том плане,
stereotypes.
что первый стереотип,
In terms that the first stereotype is that when guys live in some limited space, they think that it is very difficult to reach global economy. And our task, based on the cases of our Yakut companies, is to show that this is possible, go global.
на мировой рынок, и это возможно.
This is possible. And we have to create conditions for that. Because yes, there is such a stereotype that we are a local company and we only have to make some local solutions. And secondly, I wanted to say what needs to be done for us to work in international cooperation. I heard that it took 18 months for Paul Foos to get his visa. So the first thing about international cooperation is that we somehow have to ease all these legal restrictions and visa requirements, and we hope that these COVID restrictions will ease and the borders will be open. Because without this international cooperation, it would be very difficult to develop cooperation only online. We used to have a flight from Yakutsk to Seoul, and you could fly to Canada, but now we don't have it. And secondly, we need more events such as Slash and other events that would bring together not only Arctic regions, but all other regions that are interested in this topic. So we should come together. Maybe we could get some ideas on networking and climate change and some other areas. And we have to come together and to establish some consortiums. We have established consortium scientific center called the North, Sever. And thirdly, I would like to say that we should cooperate in a corporate segment and in venture funds. We are now looking for startups not only in Russia, but also for international startups that can be presented here in Yakutsk. So we are open for cooperation.
Друзья, к сожалению, мы ограничены во времени.
Well, unfortunately, we are very short of time, so now we have to conclude. Thank you very much to all speakers. Yes, this
Мы в
session
этом
is just
убедились.
the
Есть
beginning,
огромное количество направлений,
and there
огромное
are a lot of issues and
Анатолий
areas.
Семенов, что нам нужно собираться,
As Anatoly has said, then probably we should come together in some different areas to discuss everything and to understand where to go. We hope that the North and the Arctic is the territory that would become a place for cooperation, and that the development of technologies can make many different directions, but all speakers today said that these technologies should take into account sustainable development and the changes that the residents of the Arctic and the North
также хотелось бы добавить, что
also I would like to add that we hope that this session will lay the foundation for establishing
будет создана единая цель, да, единый проект, может быть,
working out some
начала, наверное, всех
aim or project that would bring
также
together
все
everybody
страны
who is here
Арктики
today, as well as all Arctic countries,
все страны Большого Севера, да,
and all countries of the bigger North.
Что вот
So,
та
in this
конкретная инициатива,
relation, I
которую
think
сегодня
that
озвучил
the
Василий Ефимов, она также
initiative that was voiced by Vasily Efimov
Арктическим советом, так
can
и
be
Северным
supported by the Northern Forum and
на
the
этом мы
Arctic
не
Council,
прощаемся.
and we're
Сегодня у
not
нас
saying
будут проходить
goodbye.
мастер-классы для
Today we have
стартапов
some master
и
classes for
питчинг стартапов.
startups and also pitching
Поэтому
for
просим
startups.
присоединиться
So
к
please
онлайн-трансляции.
join us our online translations
Спасибо всем огромное.
and follow
Всем до
us.
свидания.
Thank you very much and goodbye.
До свидания.
Bye.